We'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. Have a roll call, please.
Yes.
Swinburne. Yes. Woods.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Cottle.
Here.
Casanello.
Here.
Aiken.
Here.
Great. To take care of some of the town staff, I think town manager had asked if we could do the department reports, make that part of the agenda items first. There's no objection.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Are we not having anything from Mr. Weir on items A or B tonight? Is that just for next Monday?
No, it's my understanding that he would be here for that report. Is that correct?
To the best of my knowledge.
Yeah, absolutely.
To the best of my knowledge, yes.
I think it's page 68.
Which one?
Page 68, I think is where
And engineering.
Usually we have the, first page there, oh yeah, that's 43, there we go, that's what we're looking for. All right, we'll go to Holly, engineer report.
As you can see, the final asphalt layer has been placed. They're waiting, they are working on the stamped asphalt crosswalks right now. And then the items that will be left are things like the street lights, landscaping, some additional punch out. They ran out of brick for the sidewalks, so they're getting more brick. We did go ahead and send them the response to the request for time extension, and I'm waiting to hear back from them to see if they accept it or if they choose to appeal it. We also did give sent the letter to Ms. Leonard regarding her driveway. She apparently has some follow-up questions that we need to get back to her on. I'm still also awaiting the price from the contractor to do that work, for which we do have contingencies. I-66 widening, you can see that they are working on the projects now and the demolition. If you're out during the day and have a single lane closures on 66, that's not a lot of fun. Regarding the 66 Route 15 interchange project, the Citizens Information Meeting is scheduled for this Wednesday at 6 p.m. at Battlefield High School. I will be attending that as a representative for the town. VDOT did get back in touch and said that they will be evaluating the town council's request regarding the pedestrian improvements, a pedestrian bridge, and or putting a stop condition on southbound 15 with the Citizen Information Meeting comments that they get. And then the Caboose project, as was in my previous report, we did not receive any bids, and we've been working with VDOT to be able to send out solicitations to contractors. And on the pedestrian improvement project, which we call the Connolly money, the survey is complete and the environmental coordination and design has begun, and we should hopefully be getting preliminary plans in November.
Any questions for Holly?
I have one question.
Mm-hmm.
When months ago, when I believe VDOT may have been in here, or somebody else may have been in here, I was under the impression that the Old Carolina Bridge closure would be somewhere between 12 to 15 months. With the signs that are up now, it looks like it's 18 months. Just curious if that's just a big window they threw out there, and they hope to be done sooner, or do you know?
It started off at 6 months, and then it kept getting and then it kept getting longer and longer and longer. And the last window that I've heard is 18 months. I'm sure that they will open it sooner if they can, but they also don't want to promise anything sooner and then not be able to deliver. So 18 months is the window that I have heard as well.
Okay. It seems to me that it can be done a lot quicker than that. Is that purely it's cheaper to take their time, or they're waiting for 66 to be widened before they do something more?
No, I know they're not waiting on 66 because they need to do the bridge work before they do the widening. I don't know if it could be done quicker or not. Most bridges that I've seen take minimum of at least a year.
Right.
And part of what they're also having to go through right now is that, and with the demolition, they have to do it, as you've been watching it, they've been doing it in phase as they go across because they can't shut down 66.
Right.
That makes the progress much slower as well. I can ask them if there's any way to speed it up, but
I would love to ask them, not necessarily speed it up, but to get a better idea of why it's going to take 18 months when earlier it was 12 months, and then it went to 15, and now it's gone to 18. I mean, I'd like to know why, because, I mean, people are coming up to me and saying 18 months is a long time, and it is. And that road is integral to our traffic solution around here.
I'll definitely follow up with them.
Thank you.
Joe? Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Holly. I guess there's a number of unknowns with the streetscape. Just curious, any idea what the latest end date may be, given those unknowns, perhaps?
I was hoping it would be by the end of this month, which it's not. So now, looking at how long they anticipate to take the schedule and assuming it's going to take longer, I think it's going to take at least 2 weeks to do the streetlights.
Okay.
So I'm now looking at a Thanksgiving timeline, because there's still punch-out, too.
Right.
And I don't want to neglect that aspect either.
And that means they continue to accrue the LD, the liquidated damages.
That is correct. However, I would, anything that's out of scope, such as the Ms. Leonard driveway, I would expect them and encourage them to submit an additional request for time extension, because that is an out-of-scope item that's not their fault.
Okay.
So if they do submit that, that would be something else. But yes, they are still accruing, even if they're out of brick or whatnot, they are still accruing liquidated damages.
Okay, one more thing. Relative to I don't know if it's the widening project or, actually it's the I-66 study, the corridor improvement study. Any idea what's happening with that, where they are?
I know that they're still in the investigative stages. I had Brian and I have been kind of taking turns attending some of these meetings, and I was attending some of the transit access point studies for places where they think that they need to have access points, because they're going to be building the lanes interior to 66. Kind of like they're not just the HOV lane that they're building right now. They're actually going to be separate access points. And since we're at the end of what the study is, I can tell you right now we're going to have there's going to be an access point in Haymarket, but they are still just in the study stages.
Okay. Thank you.
Just purely out of curiosity, there was some brick that they had laid right in front of Madison Street, and then they tore it up.
Yes.
Any idea why?
Yes, because what happened is that after the rains, I know that I was driving by there the Friday morning, and there was a big puddle right there, and they did not construct it correctly according to plan so that the water would drain off. And so they immediately removed it and put the curb back in because they were planning on placing the final asphalt layer. That's something they have to do at their cost.
Okay.
But that's why, and there was a couple of other places where there was some drainage issues, and they removed curb on those days as well.
Gotcha.
And put it back in.
Thank you.
Holly, on the Hariver property, and down at the bottom where folks come into the food pantry, when it rains, there's like a small pond there that didn't used to be there, and I'm assuming it's because there's no grass and the water runs so fast down the hill. Are they responsible for putting that parcel of land back the way it was?
They are going to have to put any grass back that they have put tracks through. They're going to have to restore the Hariver properties, that the old police station, where they've done tracks through to the church parking lot. One of the problems there is that there is a pipe underneath the entrance to the food pantry that was crushed before they even began. And if it was crushed before they began, because it's always had ponding there, and would they be forced to replace a pipe that was crushed before they started? That's the big question.
Well, in the spring, that's going to be a mosquito fest. So whether they fix it or not, I think we need to look in
Look at having that fixed.
eradicating that
That
pond.
was the worst flooding I've seen at that spot since I've lived here.
It has been, I've been seeing it's getting worse and worse and worse as I'm looking at, I keep an eye on it as well. It will help once the grass is restored on all the properties and everything like that. But I think the town will have to address the issue of the pipe underneath the driveway.
So there was a design for a culvert for our new Botha properties.
Not as part of the enhancement project. There was always, there is one there.
Right.
And it was crushed because there has been ponding before. It's just been getting worse. And I'm not sure if I've answered your question.
Well, it doesn't look like there's a design for the water now. It seems like the culvert has filled up. It's filled up with soil and everything like that, and now it's just,
With the culvert being crushed or filled up, they did not do a design. We did not do a design for it. That's something almost like as a capital improvement to our property we should be doing.
right.
If it had been functioning perfectly and by virtue of driving over it they'd crushed it, then I would be telling them they need to replace it.
Right.
But it was my understanding that even before and my recollection, while it's not been as bad as it has been, there's always been some ponding there, and there's been issues with that pipe that needed to be fixed.
If I can, Mr. Mayor, it seems like we're working backwards here, because my train of thought is citizens come to a councilman, and a councilman comes to work session, then a work session comes to the engineer to find out what really is the problem, when it should be the other way around if we knew this pipe was crushed from before they started this work. So is there any way we could get this information before, so that we're not taking this the back direction? Because I understand that, residents from over where Matt lives, they have this issue, they bring it to his attention, or he sees it himself, then wait until there's a work session, but we already have this information. So how is it that this and other items that we need to address, how is it that we can, or you guys could bring it to our attention so that we could address them before it becomes a swamp or becomes another issue? Is there somewhere, Mr. Manager, where we could have these issues? We're a fairly young council, so we've only been here for 4 months.
Thank you.
And though we've accomplished a lot, there's still a lot of things out there that we shouldn't be caught blindsided by something like this. We should have a plan in place already to look at whether it be something that we need to approve, to spend the money to fix that which was broken before they got there. We shouldn't be waiting on a pond or mosquitoes before we act on it. So, and I'm not saying this is a judgment, but we need to find a way how to better solve it than working in the reverse. It shouldn't be, there's water, a resident complain, we bring it to you guys. It should be, okay, here's a potential issue. Let's see if we can address it before. And I'm saying that because there are other issues that we do need to look at this way, especially concerning road closures, where we should have been more proactive with it and see how best we can serve the residents before it becomes a problem. That make sense? So I know Brian will probably look into it to see how best we can address this and maybe other issues.
Just to kind of comment on that, Councilman Morris, it's one of those things now that I have, we know the issue. It has been a growing issue. The question will be, what are the effects from using that area as a staging area? This is something we can certainly address. One of the other things that also just bring your attention to, we are looking at Harover as a general, as far as with regard to the master plan. When we get into the master plan, we're going to address these types of issues. Unfortunately, it's one of those things, we do have some areas where the town where, there are problems, and you hopefully put I wouldn't necessarily say this was a Band-Aid, but you do what you would recall a quick fix, or you're kind of watching it grow. What's happened as construction has utilized that area, it's affected the way that everything drains. And so because of that, the problem has grown more than what it was before. It's been a problem we already knew about. That lower area of Harover property has always been, it gets very marshy and soft and everything during heavy rains. now that you've thrown construction or use it, we've stripped a lot of grass off that entire site just because of the nature of using it as a staging area. So it's obviously having a huge effect. There's things that we'll look into doing as temporary fixes, and that we have the line item budgets. It's more of a matter of knowing exactly how to do it, because you don't want to just chase good money after bad, just to put a temporary fix on something when we're going to be addressing the bigger fix. But we don't. It is getting relatively close. I've been noticing it too. It's getting closer and closer to the road. If you get a significant more event, so immediately we'll get in touch. We'll start the process of seeing what we can do to make some temporary adjustments and fixes, while at the same time hoping that as the staging area gets cleared up, that will take care of alleviate some of the problem. So.
Yeah, and I appreciate the work that we're doing with that regard. I'm mostly thinking about, as council members, we're going out more into the communities. So that means we're going to be getting more comments. But how can you guys better equip us with those answers? Like if someone was to come to me before this meeting to ask about the flood issue, I would not have had the information to say, it's a crack pipe, it's something that we're really looking at and how to solve it on a long-term basis. But at least I would be equipped with the information to share with them, our citizens, that, hey, this is an issue that we're aware of, this is the problem, this is what we're hoping to do to address it. So it's more you guys equipping us with that information. So that's what I'm asking for. How can we, instead of going the reverse order in starting with the residents, how can we address it beginning from town staff giving us the information? Because I just feel like I would be in a better position if someone would ask me a question. I would be in a better position if I knew about that cracked pipe or the drainage, to better answer them. Because that's what we're here for, to serve the residents. So find a way how you guys can communicate some of these things to us. Find a way how these things can be itemized and then bring it to our attention. It's not for decision making, because we're not going to make a decision on the Haroga property for another year, even more than that. We may have a decision as to the direction we want to go, but not a decision based on those things. So we just need to find a better way to communicate these little issues instead of finding them out from the residents. I'm sure you're going to.
Any other questions? Or?
Just one last thing. The only reason I bring it up is because it has grown exponentially, and you have a lot of folks that are going in and out to the food pantry. And it was pretty close to being over that little gravel driveway last week during all the rain. And with all these liquidated damages at the $1,000 a day, if we're going to do something with it, now seems to be the primo time to do something with it. So maybe, you could work with Finley or whatever, and before they do the final, punch list or whatever, because it is a problem. I would think it's going to start impacting the main road if we don't do something. So
It's going to freeze.
Yeah. And Holly, it seems like if there is two culverts, so we're saying one of the culverts might be compromised, is what we're thinking?
I think it's the culvert that's underneath the driveway to the food pantry.
Okay.
That's the one, because you'll notice it definitely ponds up before it goes in.
Well, we can definitely know that neither one of them are cleared out. So their entrance and exit on each driveway needs to be cleaned out, as well as it seems like the grading through that area to allow the water. It looks like the next inlet is right there at Haymarket Baptist, where they've got it all. So there's where that water needs to go. So it should be, to me, it seems like clean up the culverts, maybe do a little bit of grading in front of there, allowing that water to go under the driveways and get to where it needs to go, where it's done for all these years.
And there is supposed to be some grading in between that culvert and the driveway at the food pantry. It just wasn't replacing the culvert and chasing it all the way back up. If that's something that the council is open to, that could be something that I'm talking about with an out-of-scope item, to ask them to look at, to price, and then not charge them for the time, a liquidated damage for that time. If that's something
Meaning that the
town.
scope would go beyond.
Because that
Correct.
wasn't, doing the grading for a ditch that's on the plan, they should need to plan for, they had planned for that, so that's not out of scope. But then if we ask them to start replacing culverts and chasing it back upstream, then I have concerns that that's out of scope work that we're asking them to do.
Right. Well, maybe this would be another one for our other contractor to look at as well.
I'd be open to,
I think that would probably be your appropriate approach. I think we could address it probably a little bit quicker. And if it's a matter of just,
Cleaning
digging
out.
out the culverts, then I think that's something we can get with them. I've already made the note. We'll address it. I think one of the things, just to kind of comment just slightly on Councilman Morris's concerns, we can talk about it in much more detail, but that's one of those things, sometimes, as much as we try to keep all of our eyes, I mean, that's one of the conduits that we need is you all need to bring it to us. We try to keep you all abreast of all the issues that we know about, but there are sometimes that we get surprised too, and so the bigger challenge is knowing exactly who to come to ask those questions when you're not sure of the answers. Remember, you got elected, it didn't mean you had to know every single answer to all the questions.
No, we don't.
Yeah. Any other questions for Holly? Thank you, Holly. Our next, go ahead, I'm sorry.
Did you want me here for any of like the John Marshall comments or?
Let me ask our council, what do we
Do you
feel?
feel like you need to be here for it? I mean, that you would have some, because any information we can get is obviously helpful.
I think that the last time they came, I had mentioned what my concerns were. I had the one entrance that I had concerns with, and then the shared use path, trying to get that organized, which I just don't know if there's any solutions at this point. I'm happy to stay if you want me to. I don't think I'm trying to, I'm more than happy to stay. I just want to do what you need me to do.
I think you should.
Okay.
Probably yes,
That,
I
or
have
we
a
can
no, I have a-
ask, I mean, we can always let her know, ask questions after the fact.
True, yeah, we always have our, actually,
It's not going to be done tomorrow.
That's why we have
so.
Brian.
yep.
I want to do whatever you want me to. I'm more than happy to do whatever you want me to do.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
we can see DU, how's that?
If it's all right with you, you will not be for our town council meeting, correct?
I was not planning on being here for the
Yeah.
town council.
Why don't you just go ahead and stick around if you could, and that way,
Yeah.
if there's any VDOT or issues related to that.
Not a problem.
Great, thank you. All right. Prashant, our planners report.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I have updated the land use chart in the reports. We've gotten some zoning permits come in recently. You may have seen the farmer's market that's happening down on the Pace West campus on Thursdays. Has brought a lot of walking traffic to that end of town, which is nice as streetscape wraps up. I'll be talking to you later about the comprehensive plan and the commission's work on that update. And then I'd be happy to answer any questions you have regarding the table. We did get the preliminary site plan in for Payne Lane across the street. Holly and I will be reviewing that plan and providing our staff comments. It's still multiple months off from coming before you, but we are beginning work on it. So that is some positive movement versus nothing happening in the last 6 to 8 months. So, yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor? Yeah. I like the growth.
I'm starting No Shave November early. Although we're competing for the number of gray hairs there.
Hey, as far as the Haymarket self-storage, I was curious, the special use permit for outdoor storage, is that on the other side of the railroad tracks?
South of the railroad tracks, yes, sir. They actually have quite a lot of equipment out there already.
Right, that's what I thought. So this is in addition to that, that's there.
Correct. This is making it right, so to speak. We've been working with them to bring them up to the standard that they need to be at. So,
Very good, thank you.
thanks.
I had a question about the Chick-fil-A. Is that, I heard a hearsay that there was possibly something else that was going to go in there instead of the Chick-fil-A. Is that, do you have any comment on that?
Last time I spoke with the Chick-fil-A representatives, there was an issue with traffic.
Okay.
In terms of site circulation with the Route 15 interchange improvements. You know where Fauquier Bank and CVS currently exit the property, they're allowed to cross the median. That Route 15 project will close that median. That means majority of the traffic will want to exit farther back into the lot in front of the Chick-fil-A building. So you compound that traffic with people getting in and out of the fast food restaurant. VDOT had some concerns, and so for the moment, Chick-fil-A is going back looking to see if there's some things that they can do to address it, but I've not heard of any other interest in that property.
Okay. In the old firehouse, any movement?
Not heard from Mr. Zizio since he bought it last year, so we'll continue to hopefully hear from him. Some of the properties, some of the windows are starting to break and some other things. We do need to get a hold of him. So, thanks.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Our next item is our police report. Questions for the council regarding that?
I was just curious, Brian, if you know about this drug interdiction training that Jason Davis had 2-day training. Do you know where that was and what that's about?
I can't comment on this. I had not gotten a chance to talk to Chief Smith earlier today, so I imagine he's planning on being at the regular council meeting. But I cannot comment on his training. So,
Okay.
on Officer Davis's training.
That's fine. All right, I'll ask him on Monday.
No other comments or questions? Moving on to our building officials report. It's item 72 in our packet. Questions or comments?
I was just curious about the, Mr. Mayor, excuse me, I'm sorry. I was curious about the at-risk nature of that work at the Masonic Lodge. Any idea what that work is about, Marchant? And, you know, what are the particulars, and do you anticipate any, I guess, disapprovals of the application?
When we say at risk, it's there's typically a critical path to getting a tenant into a building. In the typical fashion, folks come in, they submit their zoning permit, they get their approval, then they coordinate through the building official to get their upfit. In this case, working with the building official, the Masonic Lodge wants to repurpose, I call it the barn, but it's on Madison Street behind the Verizon complex of buildings, kind of a gravel parking lot behind BB&T, behind their lodge. And so working with him, we agreed that it would be a conditional permit that they could move forward with the interior improvements to the property so they could inhabit it. I think there's a gentleman that wants to do a cigar bar in there. Point being is that the site has been unused for a while, and changing that use requires a site plan. So they're going to have to, while they're reviewing that site plan process, so for whatever reason, if that site plan process dissolves for whatever reason, the tenant wouldn't be allowed to go in the building. So that's a long-winded explanation of you proceed at your own risk. There are other steps that you have to take, and you get to those end of those steps efficiently and effectively, we'll approve you, but you do run the risk kind of going in there and spending the resources before you have your final entitlement.
And possibly redoing certain things, perhaps.
That too, depending on how they want to use the building. So we're trying to be a business friendly, but we've made it clear to the parties involved that you're at your own risk. So, thanks.
Thank you. Great.
No other questions or comments regarding that? We'll move on to our treasurer's report. Welcome, Sherry.
Good evening.
So how do we stand?
We're pretty good right now. What'd you expect me to say?
Yeah. Questions for Sherry?
Be gentle.
Be gentle, yeah.
Be gentle. I just want to wish you a lot of luck in that position. I think you're going to do great.
Thank you.
I just wanted to make a comment about our trip on Friday, if I may, Council and Mayor. It was a really good trip down to Richmond where we had a chance to meet with our friends from VACO VML, and we could see how our investment is doing. And Sherry's been keeping on top of that, and she was able to network with a whole host of folks and treasurers from around the state. So I thought that was a real good experience for you. I also want people to know that Brian is now on the Board of Trustees, our town manager.
Well done.
Yeah. Somebody in this audience nominated him.
Nomination from the floor, wow.
Nomination from the floor.
It wasn't me. It was not me.
And
Well, we're
yeah.
eliminating.
Yeah. Well, I think it's a great idea for him, and it's a great idea for the town, and it's a great idea for the small towns in the state, because now they'll get our perspective as well. And Brian and Sherry will be able to keep on top of those investments and how they're doing. So I just wanted to share that with everybody.
Any thoughts, Sherry? Any other questions, comments?
One question. When we first made this $100,000 deposit into that account, it was with the intention of, if things worked well, to follow up and deposit more in there, since most of our cash reserves are in more of a savings account, which is not generating much interest. When do you think we might take the next step?
Well, actually, Brian and I had discussed that, and Joe, on Friday as well.
Okay.
But since the meeting on Friday, we haven't actually been able to sit down
Okay.
and look at the number. That is something.
you're
that-
starting to think about that.
Yes,
All right.
absolutely.
Can I-
Sure.
Yeah, we did. We talked about it because the motivation is to get our level. If we can get up to 250,000, then we would have a vote. You see, we didn't have a vote because we were so small at the board meeting. But because there was an opening, we were able to make a move from the floor. However, next year, all bets are off. So, I mean, we might want to really consider doing that, so we do have more of a say in the process.
And is this a fixed interest? Is it, how does it work?
It's a basket of investments, more conservative than some other investments, but not as small as you would be in a money market and things of that nature, or checking account or what have you. It's just minimal basis points on that investment, whereas this pool, it's pretty safe. It's rated AA, S1, which is low volatility rate and swings in the market. And so far, the returns are in the 2 to 2.5% return. So that's a lot better than what you're seeing out there in the money market account.
Harry, I do have one question. On page 73, streetscape expense update, the contract with Finley was $1,663,470.03. To this date, we made 10 payments totaling that amount. Remaining out of pocket is approximately $800,000. Do we know what the current liquidated damages are up to this point?
Because they have not, I said it loud, sorry. Because they have not said whether they choose to accept my letter, I cannot tell you definitely what it is. I will say that the contract end date was August 29th. And then they submitted a request for a time extension. I gave a response. We're waiting to see if they choose to accept the response or if they choose to appeal it. So you can do some math in there, but they did. There were some days that I had looked at. I'm trying to figure out what I can say and what I'm not supposed to say at this point. There were some days that were I at least proposed granting.
Right, so I guess the follow-up question, let's say we owe $800,000, and let's just say the total liquidated damages is $100,000. Are we going to pay them $700,000, or do we pay the $800,000 and how will the money be exchanged?
The way that the invoices work, there's two ways, is that on every single invoice that they have ever submitted, we have kept back a 5% retainage. As of, I think it was last week when we were crunching the numbers, the amount of retainage that we withheld, in other words, they earned that money, we just said we're holding on to it. The money that we had withheld exceeded the amount of liquidated damages. In addition, when it comes to the final invoice, that's when all of the, how much retainage should you get back, what are the liquidated damages, because they're going to have some of the, still the big ticket items that are left, the street lights and stuff like that. So it's in the final invoice, and what it will be is we just will not pay them what they shouldn't get due to liquidated damages. We'll also, this was one of the worst case scenarios as well. As I had mentioned, I think previously, there are some items such as the field office that were not used, that are still, we're giving you, this is what the budgeted item was, but we know that that's an item that they didn't, they're not even billing. This was not a lump sum contract. It was a unit price contract. So if they didn't use it, they don't get paid for it.
So it would be correct to say that the total, total payments of $879, we actually didn't, we haven't actually spent all that. They haven't received a check for that.
No, I believe that's what they have received a check for.
Correct.
So with the $800 that's going to be out of pocket for the town, where is the 5% then? I'm lost.
Well, that's what I was saying, is that she gave you that's what the worst case scenario is.
Okay.
Does not take into account liquidated damages. It does not take into account items that they have not charged.
Okay.
We wanted you to have what the worst case is. I don't want to assume anything on the liquidated damages until it's finished.
I understand. Okay, so that's not, okay. All right. You have any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you, Sherry.
Thank you.
Ms. Denise, museum report.
Good evening, Council.
Good evening, ma'am. Good evening.
I just want to give you a few updates that's not reflective on my museum report. The quilt exhibit was very successful this year. During our 5-week weekend run, we had over 640 visitors in the museum. Also, Tuesday, November 18th is National Readers Day. The museum will be participating at Gravely Elementary School in Dominion Valley, where I will be reading for a 2-hour block period. And if any council members are definitely interested in this, I can forward you the information as well. And our total visitor count for October was 146. Last weekend was 18 visitors.
Any questions for Denise? Any questions to the council?
No, but I will forward you that information because it's very important. It's promoting literacy in Prince William County, and over 20,000 students are read to on that one particular day.
I'm sorry, did you say what time that was on Tuesday?
I can forward you the information because there's blocks set aside, and it's some of the local schools here.
Can you forward me to, please?
Absolutely.
You said it's on Tuesday, that right?
Tuesday, November 18th.
They'll have to work it out if they can understand me, but I'll read.
The representative from the area will let you know what time slots are still available.
There you go. All right. Thanks. Great. Thank you. Okay. I think we were going to go ahead and skip our manager's report. We'll tag him on the very back end of there. So we'll kind of go back to our original agenda items here. Looks like Mr. Weir has joined us, so we'll ask him to come forward about the Planning Commission brief, first on the John Marshall Commons.
I guess the first question is, what would you guys like to know?
I guess, did everybody have a chance to read his briefing?
First of all, I think it's good evening.
I don't know, I've been standing out in the sun watching a track meet my daughter run, so I'm a little discombobulated on time right now.
Yeah, so again, it's good evening.
Good evening.
Bob, thanks for coming. Mr. Mayor, if I may?
Go ahead.
I read your report, Bob. I think it's a very good report, but I had a number of questions. We'll skip that. Yeah, where to begin? Well, I'm just curious. I understand where you're coming from on the transportation, the education, schools issues, the CEC. I got that. My overriding question is, we need to get back to our Supervisor Cantlin and give him our thoughts on the matter. And while I understand we probably are not happy with certain aspects of it, are there things that you can think of that would make sense recommending, perhaps, that they take a look at and do to make it a viable project? Because, I mean, I understand the additional units and the strain it'll put on the network, even though they're going to be expanding the roadways and other infrastructure. I'm just, curious about what can we recommend that we can take back to our supervisor and to the county that would make sense from your perspective?
Boy, that's a loaded question. Well, to be honest with you, if they went with what the plan is for that in terms of the long-range land use plan, and designing it such that it fit the CEC category, where the residential aspect of it made up only 25%, where the residential aspect of it complemented a commercial aspect, that'd be a good starting point. But this isn't that. I think we went into a little bit of detail about that. It doesn't even come close. In looking at this, I've looked at God knows how many plans over the years, and this seems to be more egregiously missed the mark than any other plan I've seen. I don't know how it came about. I don't know how it got to the point that it's at. We were operating under the gun because Mr. Wilborn was asserting that he was going to push this and get it before the Planning Commission this month. As of the last DAP schedule I got from the county last week, it's not even scheduled for a hearing yet. So, my sense is the timetable that was set forth by the applicant was exaggerated, shall we say. Okay. I haven't even seen a staff report from the county on this yet, and I would certainly hope that the county has some of the similar concerns that we've got. But you just never know. It's hard to definitively say one thing or the other, except to deal with the facts as have been presented in the current application. And the current application doesn't, in my mind, and in the rest of the Planning Commission's mind, meet either our needs, the county's needs, or quite frankly, the county's ordinances. So it's strictly, this is just sort of a, here are the facts, here's what they've submitted, here's where it doesn't comport with either the long-range land use map, the long-range land use plan, the comp plan, whatever. Here are the shortcomings, here are the deficiencies, and here are the impacts that it's going to have on transportation and schools. What I find terribly interesting is these comments were written, 3 months ago, roughly? And if anybody had gone to the Stonehaven hearing on the comp plan and rezoning application for the Stonehaven matter a couple of weeks ago, you would have heard the residents of the Nokesville area, the Brentsville district, and some from the Gainesville district echo these very same concerns with a project 10 times the scale. And, I'm sure most of you are aware, that particular project was deferred by the county until January when there's a sitting Brentsville representative. Where it's going to go at that time, I don't know. I'm looking at a board that, if I'm trying to figure out which way they're going to flip-flop or fly on this, it's a split board, and the action and the application will probably die. These issues will come up again when this application, if it ever hits the Planning Commission and hits the county board. Those very same issues are going to come up with regard to this application, even though it's 1/10 the scale. These issues have suddenly become the hot-button issues in the western part of the county. Education, overcrowding in the schools, proffers, transportation. We talked at fairly great lengths about the roundabout, and This application proposes a roundabout. Our parking study proposes 2 additional roundabouts. We're going to have roundabouts from one end of town to the other. And I think that's one of the real problems that I've got with this is that the way this was processed, and I understand they didn't have legal counsel for the vast majority of the time that this thing was being pushed through. It's my understanding that former Supervisor Wilborn was pushing this through. But it doesn't seem like there was a whole lot of communication between, and it's not our fault, it's certainly not the county board's fault, but there wasn't a whole lot of conversation or communication between the county board, the town, and particularly county staff. I'm looking at the response letter on this, and I think one of the things that really jumped out to me was on the last page of the response letter. It's in packet page 9, under transportation, item 2, the roundabout. And there's a note that the roundabout has been approved by both Prince William County DOT and VDOT. Well, the interesting thing is, apart from county transportation, until I brought this issue up with Supervisor Candlin and a couple of other people in the county, nobody knew about it. This was a plan that was taken to Richmond by the transportation planner for Prince William County, brought before VDOT, signed off on VDOT. Nobody in the county has authorized it yet. Nobody knew about it. So to say that this has been approved by both... Okay, stop that. To say that this has been approved by Prince William County is a stretch, because at the end of the day, this has got to be approved by the board, and it hadn't even made it up that, it hadn't even made it to the Planning Commission yet. I don't know what DOT has to do with this, since there's no federal right-of-way that I'm aware of. The only people that I know who have approved it, quote-unquote, are VDOT and the county transportation staff. It's another one of these situations where I think it's just, it's not ready. It's not ready for prime time. It's not ready to go anywhere yet, and all we have done is given you comments based on the application as it currently stands, and the deficiencies are marked. It's a question of where does it go from here. I mean, should the town approach the county at this point in time and offer its comments? Historically, we have. My personal opinion is that it should be done well before this goes to the Planning Commission. That way, both the county staff, the Planning Commission members for the county, and the applicant have the time to address concerns and change the application before it hits that. Is that going to happen? I don't know. I mean, it seems to me that they've done a lot of engineering and a lot of planning and have been given a lot of assurances that this is going to fly through, but I don't see anything to indicate that at this point in time. So this is really a strange one for me. I mean, it's usually cut and dry. This is what you're getting. This is where it can be better. But since it's got so many deficiencies and needs to be corrected in so many ways, both from a technical and from a use standpoint, I think the only thing that I would suggest the town do is go ahead and comment on it at this point and see if they change it, or see if it forces them to change it, or see if it makes the county staff take note. They should, given what happened at the Stoneham hearing, and I would think they would at this point in time, but I don't know. I mean, this is a really odd one.
Well, I thank you for that, Bob. Did you have a question or a comment, Marshall?
Thank you, Councilmember. I guess, what is a little unusual, and I mentioned this to you last time, is the fact that we do have a county representative or supervisor that's being proactive. We've typically not been involved till the back end. I would align with what Chairman Weir is saying, is that at this point, before it's gone to hearing, that we do assemble the commission's comments and assemble any comments you have as a council. I noted in the item, as a staff, we have comments in terms of integration with the road systems and some other types of things. Provide that as a comment letter to the staff. What happens when we have a 1 mile jurisdiction review is when the staff report is prepared for the county planning commission hearing, we have a section in there that says neighboring jurisdictions, and that would be the section in which all our issues would be vetted. It's not necessarily a situation where you say we recommend denial or support. It lists the litany of concerns that we have. Now, sending it ahead of time to the project manager, The applicant at their discretion could respond directly either to our comments or respond to the project manager, or wait until they come to the hearing. So that's what I would recommend at this point. Is there general comments or questions? Now, I would note is that the county does otherwise review its comp plans, as the commission has done, in terms of the policies that apply. It also reviews the traffic impact analysis that's done with it. And the commission was able to note that the growth rate seemed low, and they amended that study to account for it. So it's not as if this is in a vacuum. The county otherwise does a lot of this review itself and will make its recommendations, its staff will, to the commission and to the board. So I would concur with that recommendation, and I would suggest or recommend tonight that you vet your concerns. Brian and I will put those into kind of a bulletized list of comments along with the commission's comments and the staff comments. We'll send that to the staff, and we'll see where it goes from there. There's still plenty of time for you to be able to what I would expect is at the time that the Board of Supervisors gets ready to make a final decision, at that point you could perhaps send a formal resolution of support or non-support. But at this time, it's simply a, here's our concerns, our issues. Please address them as part of your analysis.
It would be like a friendly letter.
Correct. And I think that's the spirit of cooperation. There was a time where if I represented the town and got up and spoke, we weren't well received at the county. I think in this instance, it's a good kind of an olive branch on, and we'll probably get more standing and attention with that approach versus kind of coming out right off the guns blazing. We don't support or we support.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
I'm sorry.
Can I continue just for a moment? I think that's a very reasonable approach. I'm concerned about the entire process. And it seems to me that we're somewhat cut out of the process, even though it's outside our town, there's an impact to a certain extent. We have review, I guess you call it the 1 mile review or whatever.
Correct.
But is there a way that we could perhaps get more involved in the process during the development stage? And does that make any sense? I don't know. I'm asking you guys as the pros. The other thing is, and let me just ask a second question, relative to the standards, Bob and Marchand, and the CEC and all the standards, do we have a sense of what the number of units would be if they did adhere to those standards? You know, absent the other transportation and education issues. I mean, we don't need an answer right now. I mean, it's a calculation, I'm sure, but. All right, so I was kind of curious about that so that we could better understand and make the argument, okay, perhaps you're not actually following your standards, and if you did, this is what it would look like.
Correct. And then again, that's part of the county's analysis. To go back to your first question, and again, this being a new council, and there's kind of an unfamiliarity with the process. But when the application first comes in to the county and the staff begins the review, we get a courtesy copy. The staff does, the town does. We've typically responded, again, practical matters. This is what our land use plan says. This is what, there's some situations you may not be aware of, and those are incorporated into the staff report. We have not typically been approached by the applicant this early on. And obviously, there's representatives from the developer here tonight, and they're anxious to get our support. And again, at the end of the day, it's a recommendation. Certainly, the board's under no obligation to incorporate our changes or base our decision on our changes. It's simply a courtesy review. How can we improve that process? You know, to the point that as a staff, we incorporate the commission earlier or the council earlier, we can do that. But the point that we do that, again, it would be practical recommendations. It wouldn't be necessarily weighing in on the final position of the council. Would be more of kind of the practical, here's our issues, here's our concerns, here's what we're working on. Gives the applicant, again, a time to look at it, gives the staff a chance to incorporate it, those types of things. So I think what's happening now is positive. There's probably different expectations of how it should have happened, but we're doing well. So hopefully that answers your question. In terms of the policy question, he can work it out, but I think if I called the county project manager, he would have a handle on what that recommended ratio would be. So.
Depending on the density, you're probably looking somewhere, it's going to be a range, 84 units at the high end, 42 at the low, somewhere in the middle, because you have to do it as a gross floor area as opposed to number of units. My guess is it'll be somewhere in the middle of 42 and 84. If I understand you correct, your previous question correctly, though, I think essentially what you're getting at is we know what the carrot is. Do we have a stick? Is that
well, not
is there a way to?
I'm thinking more of a voice.
Yes, there is. and it's one that the town has been loath to employ over these many years, but perhaps it's time. We do have that charter provision where all subdivisions within a mile of the town have to go through us before they're recorded with the circuit court. If you review your charter provisions, all subdivision of property within 1 mile of the town has to be reviewed by the town and approved by the town prior to recordation with the circuit court. The town, for any number of reasons, has never done it, largely because the circuit court has been unwilling to tell us when that stuff comes in for recordation. So if you want leverage to use in these circumstances, the leverage lies in the charter. And I think the recent Attorney General opinion, and Mr. Vanderpool can speak better to this, but I think several of the recent Attorney General opinions on the power of the local charters, ours in particular, and some other ones in the southern part of the state, sort of underscores that. And it's something that we've never used. It's something the county wishes didn't exist and pretends doesn't exist. And perhaps if we're to have a larger voice in what happens in the area around the town, perhaps it's time to play that card. It's a thought.
Well, I thank you for your both of your comments, and I'll take that under advisement.
Okay.
I yield.
Mr. Morse, did you have?
Yes, I have a couple of things. Mr. Weir, I don't think you know how much we value your comments and your input and the PC's comments and inputs. And I want you to understand I can speak on behalf of the town council, that we do value your comments and your input. As we look at a project like this, and if I can piggyback on what Joe was saying, as you put forward this recommendation, which I don't think we disagree with the recommendation, we would love to see the recommendations and possible solutions, because you have the expertise to balance, just like how you're able to come up with that figure, those numbers as to the range, as to the number of units compared. Man, you have so much that you have to offer. And I just want to go on record in saying that we need that. We need those comments. We need it recorded so that we can be better educated as we go forward in making the decisions.
I appreciate that, and to be honest with you, I wish I could give you a concrete recommendation on how to approve this. I went to the Stonehaven hearing and spoke as a citizen, and I offered some concrete recommendations to the board regarding phasing, regarding scheduling of road improvements, that sort of thing. To be honest with you, as I stated earlier, I can't do that with this application. I've never had one like this where I've had so many questions. I mean, usually they've got the zoning and the comp plan and all the long-range land use stuff zipped up from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. And that's just, quite frankly, not the case, in my view, in this particular application. I wish I could give you a better answer. I can't.
But you could list on that recommendation what is proposed to be there.
So the county analysis does that. The county staff, when they send it out to their community planners that administrate the CEC policies, in their analysis, they say we envision on the property would be this ratio of commercial to residential. So that's part of the recommendation. The applicant responds, what they've come up with a product saying, knowing that the conflicts with the county's plan, they still want to move this plan forward to the board. So I believe that the analysis that you're suggesting has already been done. We haven't made it available to the commission or the council. That would have to be coming from we'd probably get it from the project manager if we needed to.
Because if I can just look at just one of the aspects, one of the areas that I have an issue with, which is schooling. Okay. Over the past month, we've looked at 2 different proposals for 2 different properties.
Correct.
And they have gone ahead in their proposal in listing how many additional students, 89 students, 66 high school, 30 middle school, But they've listed that, but I think we need to do more research as far. There are other developments outside of those 2 that's going to impact the numbers that our schools can accommodate. So I don't know if it's something where we need to do that study also, the town planner alongside Mr. Weir, to say, hey, these are other developments, and you may be looking at 4,000 available seating at Battlefield High School. That's a joke. You know, but with these other developments, we're way above the number of students that we can accommodate there.
The schools also did their analysis, and again, we can make that available to you, and that may be the missing key here. Is
Actually,
it?
let me chime in on that.
I'm
because
sorry.
That you make a very good point, and again, everything goes back to Stonehaven at this point in time because a lot of things became readily apparent during that particular hearing, and schools was one of them. For the first time that I can remember, school planning staff was actually called before the Board of County Supervisors to explain just exactly that, school capacity, enrollment numbers. I believe Mr. Devon, sitting behind me, was there and could probably attest to this better than I can. But one of the things that became readily apparent was, yes, the county school division's planning staff does consider future enrollment for as yet unbuilt residential units, but they don't consider the maximum impact of. They pick a number somewhere in the middle, and typically it doesn't work, or typically it hasn't worked, and that's why the numbers keep growing the way they are. I think one of the things that is going to be a real issue in Prince William County, and that's what we're dealing with because we don't run the schools, we don't pay for the schools. But the county is almost at a threshold, in my view. They want to maintain their AAA debt service, so they maintain their lower bond or their lower interest rates. At the same time, the chairman of the board is intimating that he wants to take out more road bonds, which eats up more of your debt capacity. The school board is claiming they need all of these schools built between now and 2019. And quite frankly, given what their debt service is right now, they're right up against it. And I have a serious question, not as a planning commissioner, but as a resident of Prince William County, as to whether this is viable in the long term. And I suspect it's not. And I think that the comeuppance is coming very soon. So it's wonderful for the school board and for the attorneys and for everybody else to say, you know, we're going to have a middle school by this date, we're going to have an elementary school by this date, we're going to have a high school on the western end in 2019. I'm a bit of a skeptic, but given where the county sits right now in terms of diminishing revenues, the market's not helping them a whole lot. I mean, the housing reports were out last week. They weren't all that good. And as much debt service as they're using up, I have no faith that they're going to be able to pull off a new high school by 2019, particularly if you listen to their planning department, school board's planning department, that is. They feel like they've almost been dealt a crippling blow by not having Stonehaven approved last month. Their position being, oh, you're going to cost us 3 months, that's going to set us back on a timetable, you know, that could force us back to 2020 or beyond, largely because they failed to have a plan B. They were relying on that school Crawford site to generate that 2019 high school, and now that's in jeopardy. And if, you know, Stonehaven doesn't get approved in January, how is that going to impact overcrowding in the out years? It's not going to be good. I mean, I personally sit on the school board's budget committee. I know that several of the school board members are in the process of calling for their CIP to be revised. So a lot of these planned additions, a lot of these planned new schools could either be stricken from their CIP or moved back. You've got a right to be concerned. I don't see it getting any better anytime in the near future. And it's not just the 2,000 units at Stonehaven, the 200 units here, 200 units over here, the 200 units over there.
Exactly.
So yeah, cumulative effects. Mm-hmm. I guess what I would suggest is give them a chance to respond. And this whole exercise is for us to raise those questions and say, as a council, we have concerns about the capacity, not just of the 89 students that are here, but the additional kind of what was outlined in that letter. You send that to them and give them the chance to respond. And to the point that we're not comfortable with that answer, then we would say, well, maybe we want to put more resources into doing our own analysis. But I think as a force, to use a military term, the first sortie, so to speak, again, is you framing your questions, noting your concerns. There are positives to this project. There are negatives to the project. So under that suggestion, maybe that's what we can do, is make this part of the list of questions that we send back to the county and to the applicant, so.
If currently, according to page 3, it's zoned A1 and M2, correct?
Correct.
So I guess they could take this 27.7 acre parcel, since it's currently zoned that, and make it all light industrial, correct?
No.
They would have to, yeah. They only have what they have today. So the R units would either be agricultural uses under what's called by right zoning, or the M would be the manufacturing uses. So however much they could I don't want to use the word eke out. But they have some rights to develop the land today. Is that the question you're asking?
Right. I understand the schools, being a teacher myself, I understand that aspect. I guess my question is, let's say for a second this plan didn't go forward. What could they conceivably build?
Agricultural and light industrial uses allowed by the county zoning ordinance.
But could they go all light industrial?
No, but only the part, I can't remember the split between it, but if they wanted to develop the whole site, they'd have to rezone the whole site light industrial, but I'd have to look up the acres for the M2.
It would also require a comp plan amendment.
All right, and then the only last question I have, and this doesn't just go back to the planning commission, this seems to be a reoccurring thing as I sit here the first couple months. Why, as a town, and correct me if I'm wrong, are we so adverse to traffic circles? I mean, I hear the traffic circle thing come up repeatedly when we're discussing roads through the town. Why is that such an issue?
From a staff perspective, it's been my experience, and I believe Holly's experience, that there is some validity in having a traffic circle.
Right.
The commission, I think, Bob, you had put some comments on I guess how that system, how those traffic circles would tie into the system beyond.
Right.
But the traffic circles themselves, there has been, positive impacts of those over the years.
Right.
Part of the question was, too, how the traffic would behave. Commercial traffic's coming in, residential traffic's going out, so there were some questions about the behavior. But to general design, people do support, or there's support.
I just want to make sure, because I see traffic circles as a good thing for a walking town, because it slows traffic down, keeps traffic moving. And coming up to this council tonight, there are people doing at least 45 to 50 miles an hour into the town past Haymarket Baptist. So I would just like us to, to go on record that we support traffic circles, because I think it's a good thing. And I think a lot of people, especially the older drivers, get freaked out about traffic circles in general. And I can tell you, as a licensed driver's ed instructor in the state of Virginia, high school kids do very well in traffic circles, and they're far safer than traditional lighted intersections, and they keep the traffic flowing. So maybe I'm misunderstanding, but
I think the way you would frame that, then, if there's council support, would say we're supportive of the concept of a traffic circle.
right.
However, we would ask that the county can affirm that the level of service of that road will continue to be an appropriate level of service following the construction of that circle. So there's ways to send your support, but then have that air of caution with it too.
Right.
So,
And the last comment, we talk about what is currently being proposed. I don't have enough expertise in what they could currently do.
okay.
I'm being asked to write or to formulate an opinion. What does it look like they could currently do, as opposed to what are they planning to do, and how would that impact the town's businesses? So I guess for me, if I knew what they could do, then I could compare apples to apples, because right now, I don't have a clue what they could do.
Just a quick response to that. So right now, the land's obviously vacant.
Correct.
So were the board to deny it, it would sit fallow until the applicant, if they wanted to, or the owners decided to develop it what they call by right. So they could either develop an array of agricultural uses or manufacturing uses, and all that would require is them to submit a site plan. They'd take that engineering plan to the county and they'd stamp it. That would be probably based on the, how viable is that. The other option is they could come back in with a different rezoning and rezone it to some other assortment of uses and things like that. I think part of the county's concern is you're taking away some of your employment uses and changing them out for residential uses. So that's kind of the option here. It sits fallow. They develop under the by right uses they have, or the board supports the existing plan, or they come up with some other plan. So,
If I might, if I remember the splits correctly, it's something like 3/4 to 1, or 3 to 1, A1 to M2.
Yeah, I can look it up.
I mean, it's something on order. The M2 classification was rather small as a component of the whole thing. Under the A1, it's what, 1 per 10 acres?
For residential.
For residential uses in the A1. So, 2 houses on a preponderance of the property. It's probably actually a little bit more than that because this is a compilation of several parcels. But at most, if you left the existing parcels intact, 5 houses where 5 houses currently stand. Net zero.
Okay. Question. A comment and a question. If the comment is, if I own that property, I would want 200 units on it because I would put more money in my pocket. The question for Mr. Weir is, if this whole thing concerning the roundabout, if it was approved by VDOT and everything, they had gone through the right channels and stuff, would you still oppose having a roundabout there?
If it was just about the roundabout, no. I think what Marchant was sort of intimating at is, I don't know how this ties in with our current transportation plan, and I don't know how it ties in with the transportation plan for 55. As with so many things, it's like this is being viewed in a vacuum. We're looking at this small segment of road, and this is the improvement of road we're going to do. If you look at other developments, we're giving you a 1/4 mile of left turn lane. But it doesn't look at the larger picture. In this case, Route 55 from 29 to Haymarket. I think we noted in here that in some places it's proposed in the county plan and the long-range transportation plan to be anywhere from a 4 to 6 lane connector from 29 to the town limits, and then suddenly you go to 2 lanes. The question is, where is it going to be 6 lanes? Where is it going to be 4 lanes? And where is that transition going to be to the 2-lane section in town? And the way that this was proposed, correct me if I'm wrong, Marchant, it was 2 lanes coming out of one end of the roundabout, 4 lanes going into it, which I kind of have a problem with, and then 2 lanes feeding that 4 lane. And then if you look at a little bit deeper into that, into, when is all of this construction supposed to occur that will eventually tie into this roundabout? There's no funding for it in the near or long term in the county calendar.
And how would that compare to putting lights? Which one would be more viable for the town? Which one would allow traffic to flow better for the town, lights or roundabout? Because something is going, if they get the approval, something is going to go there.
Correct, and that's another approach I was suggesting earlier, is you simply say your preferences and your recommendations. I think part of what Chairman Weir, you made as part of your comment, saying, okay, we're generally supportive of the roundabout concept, but we're not sure, or it's not clear how it would tie into the balance of the county's uses, and have them respond. How have you thought about it, county? And have them bring their response.
I mean, do we know if they've done the analysis comparing the two?
They did. They did do a study on the lights. Yeah, correct. Okay. And the support was for the latter, that the traffic circle was sent to have do a better job of slowing traffic, transitioning traffic. You don't have the queuing effect with the light. You have everyone stopping, and it creates some other issues. So there's pros and cons to each, but generally the roundabout was considered favorable.
It's my understanding it was 4 to 2. You had 4 lanes coming in.
Well, yes. So the county's plan system is from 4.
Right.
So going in, you would transition to, I believe it's, the roundabout itself is 1 lane. Mm-hmm. So you would transition down to 4, down to 2 coming into the roundabout, and then 1 lane going in and out.
Ms. Winford, did you have a comment?
No, the comment I was going to make was, to me, the roundabout makes all the sense in the world, in that it's buffering us from all of that and slowing everything down, because, as you said, just me coming to this meeting tonight, now that they've got that paved on 55, people were flying through.
It's a gauntlet, yeah.
Yep. And we need a buffer. And I've been through the roundabouts, the Gilbert's Corners and all that. Everyone was all upset about all that going in, but that traffic no longer backs up. Period. End of statement. I mean, it's proven that those work. And I would just as soon have a buffer coming into our town, slowing all that down, especially now that we're going to have sidewalks, or there are going to be kids walking to school, or, that's a busy road. Anything we can do to slow it down, just common sense.
Any other comments for? Okay. Shall we move on then?
Yes.
Ready?
If I could just,
Sure.
real
Go
quick,
ahead.
if we could just get some direction. Would you like us to take this conversation,
Yes.
the
Yes.
commission's comments and our comments,
Yes.
roll it into a referral letter?
Yes.
Yes.
In a
Send it on.
positive manner, preferably.
Okay, we will get that done. Thank you.
Great, thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Bob.
Not a problem.
Our next item, item B, the Planning Commission brief on the transmission lines. In fact, we're going to have some updates with that as well. I think Mr. Chairman Passanello and myself.
Sir, great. I'll let you start since you're in here.
Well, we'll let Bob give his presentation, and then
Oh, okay. Yeah, we can do that.
Where would you like me to start? Or is there anything in particular you want to address?
Well, I'll jump right in, Bob, if that's okay with everybody else. I think, as you guys have been busy, guys, and men and women on this commission. You've done a great job with the report. One of the things that jumped out at me, why wouldn't we just come out and say that we would never envision high-voltage power transmission lines overhead through the town? Why wouldn't we just say we want it underground?
If it were simply,
Just as a policy.
because I don't think it would carry the weight that you needed to carry with the SEC or with Dominion. I think you have to put it in a sort of a fact-based, this is why we're opposed to it here, this is why we're not opposed to it here manner. I don't think you can simply say, as a policy and in general, we don't envision these, period, end of story. You're dealing with a board that is going to get a lot of facts from a lot of parties, including Dominion. They're going to have reams of paperwork, reams of reports, and to simply come out with a one-page, one-paragraph statement that says, we just oppose it, period, I don't think does you any service.
Well, I'm not really saying opposing it, period. I'm saying, from what I read in the report, and it's a very good report, all of the alignments that we were not in favor of were all overhead, I believe. And the one that showed promise was the underground on the north side of 66. So given that, I don't see any way that we would ever be in favor of overhead power lines through the town. Is that correct? I don't know.
I personally wouldn't be, no. But you have to remember that part of this, we're dealing with a small segment of the project, and I think we said that in the opening. We're not concerning ourselves with what they do beyond the town limits in the county. And in a lot of places where they're traversing county property, overhead probably makes sense. So if you want to limit that comment or that line of thought to strictly the town, I suspect that's fine. But it's also it's a function of the size of the town more than anything else. If we were a larger jurisdiction, would we make that blanket statement? Probably not. I'm sure that's why Prince William County doesn't. It's an odd circumstance for us, just given our limited geographic area.
Okay. If I'm correct, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think in our ordinance, we state that anything below or above 34.5 has to go underground.
No, it's anything below, that's the
Anything
problem.
below, there you go.
That's the problem.
Yeah, so we would, and you recommended that we check out, get verification or confirmation of the load on the double stacking to determine if in fact that would meet our code, right?
It's something to look at. I have a sneaky suspicion, in fact, I'm almost certain that it's above 34.5 K. And then it's a matter of how do you calculate it? Do you calculate it as just the additional line, or do you calculate it as the whole load on all of the transmission lines, in which case it's certainly over 34.5.
Got it. So, I'll try to be brief here, and just another overview comment.
Can I ask a question on that?
Go ahead.
Just because it's on the same subject, just so we know. Can't they just keep adding height no matter what once they have it in place? So the power poles out here going through town, can't they just go above it? Can't that happen with the power line? We're talking about height and wattage and all that.
I guess in theory they could. It would present some rather unique engineering challenges at a point in time.
But they
because
don't
your
have to
load-
ask permission once it's in place, technically, do they?
I don't think they require our permission to put that double stack in at all,
Right,
no.
okay. I just want, thank you.
Okay, not a problem. Yeah, I don't believe so either. I think they have the easement, and more than likely, they did state that they would come back to us and show us what they were proposing to do, but there really certainly isn't any requirement on their part.
No, as long as they build within the existing right-of-way, I don't think there's a whole lot we can do, although I'm somewhat curious as to where they're going to put this, because my understanding is that in order to construct the double build, they have to erect new poles.
Right.
Yeah, and
That's correct.
And I noted this to the Dominion engineers. I said, it's interesting that you're approaching us with this project to put in all of these new poles immediately after we've done a utility relocation that's been on the books for years. Why didn't you guys just put it underground at that point in time? And they sort of didn't want to answer that question. But, yeah, in short, I suspect that if they build within the current right-of-way, there's not a whole lot we can do one way or the other.
Okay. One of the things that struck me in your presentation about when you were analyzing the different routes, constructability, the strengths, the weaknesses, the environmental impacts. Just from my perspective, I would have said that the environmental impacts of the view shed is, in my view, an environmental impact as well. But that's just a minor comment. The thing that strikes me about where we can perhaps attack this and give them some ideas on why they need to go underground, and maybe we need to say it explicitly in this report, is the reliability issue. Now, you guys, you were getting close to it when you talked about the man-made issues, and I think I'm assuming that had to do with inflicted by man, terrorists, and what have you. But what about the reliability issue? The storms, derechos, hurricanes, things of that nature, and the fact that it is underground, and perhaps we can concede that it is more costly on the front end, but perhaps on the back end, over the long term, the maintenance is probably less than what it would be overhead, particularly when you're dealing with those types of weather-related events. Your thoughts on that?
We actually talked to Dominion's engineers about this, and they have an interesting view.
They always do.
Their position on overhead distribution lines is that it's better to put them underground. And in fact, there is a significant amount of state funding now.
Hold that thought for a second. Their view is that distribution lines should be underground.
Correct.
So,
for reliability, safety, and repair, yes.
Exactly. So that kind of sounds contradictory to a statement that they made in our presentations about the problematic nature of putting them underground and then providing the feeds to the town.
As I said, they have an interesting take.
Okay.
Their take on the distribution lines is just as you asserted. Their take on the transmission lines is that it's more expensive and less operationally isn't as easy as constructing them overhead. And they asserted at some point in time, and I'll get Ralph to chime in on this if he recalls, we actually called them on that when they started to dispute whether a similar circumstance existed between distribution and transmission lines. And they asserted that it would take them days to find the break in an underground transmission line. And I see you nodding your head, and yes, I don't buy it either. If you have the equipment that can locate a fault within minutes in an underground distribution line, when you're talking about 230, kV, it's in a limited realm with all kinds of sensors and all kinds of equipment. I don't buy their argument at all. I think what it actually comes down to is there is some considerable expense to placing it underground, not just in terms of the structure, but in terms of you have to insulate it and a variety of other things that have to be done. And I think at the end of the day, it's simply a cost thing. And I don't personally buy any of the arguments that they're making that from a maintenance standpoint or a repair standpoint, it's any more difficult for them to upkeep it or maintain it than it is to do an overhead line. In fact, I think it's probably, at the end of the day, cheaper for them to put it underground from that standpoint. And I think from a wear and tear, weathering, environmental standpoint, so long as you don't get leaks in there, long term it's probably better too.
Right. Okay. Those are my overarching comments. I mean, there are more in here, but I want to let other folks get in because I know there are probably a lot of questions, so I'll yield for now.
Mr. Aiken, anything? Mr. Cottle? Mr. Woods? Ms. Winford?
No, I mean, we've gone over. He's got it all laid out.
Is there any way in our comments to them that we could list where they said this was their preference underground, but then no backtracking? Is there any way we could find, just to make reference to? Yeah. Because basically they're throwing us the bones with certain things. They're going back on their words with certain things. This is Dominion we're dealing with. So
most of it was verbal. Some of it was verbal and may very well be on tape. In fact, did we discuss this during the Planning Commission session with them?
The issue, though, is what dealing with recrimination looks like sour grapes. What we need to deal with is what I would say to dispatch. What makes sense, what is factual, what happens. All the negotiations that went before it, nobody cares. When we present to the State Corporation Commission, they're not interested in who said what when. It has no impact on that. So irrespective of what may have been said first, what was said second, who said what when, nobody cares.
Well, I beg to differ because there are 4 other underground operations that they have in this area. True?
True.
So we could always go back to those 4 and make a reference to those 4. This is not about who said what, when, or where. This is looking at facts, and the facts is that there's one in Arlington, there's Dumfries, there are 4 of them right around us that we could look at to say, why did you then go underground here, but would not contemplate underground here?
I tried to be nice with that section of the report and not bury Dominion too much. I gave you 4 examples. There are many more. Mm-hmm. And I picked these 4 examples for some very particular reasons because they demonstrate how Dominion has placed stuff underground in a variety of settings. If you look at the Arlington County one, that Radnor Heights underground transmission line, that's in a relatively heavily suburban area. The other one from the Potomac River Station is in a much more urban setting, even than what was in the first Arlington County one. And then you look at the Loudoun County one, and that's in a rural area. What's interesting is it's in a historic area, and the only place that it's really underground is in direct proximity of the data center. And why? If I had to bet, it's because those data centers wanted it put that way for security purposes. And Dominion was more than happy to comply. I think the other thing that you have to bear in mind is that, and this is just a personal observation on my part, In looking at a lot of the recent applications to the SEC for overhead transmission lines, historically, Dominion, by and large, got what they wanted. They made an application and they got what they, pretty much what they asked for. In recent years, hasn't been the case so much. The SEC has said, it's a nice route, but no, you're not putting it there. And I think one of the reasons that we wrote the report the way that we wrote it was so that we could delineate all of the problems that we could think of on the various proposed route, whether they were proposed by Dominion or proposed by the public input sessions, and essentially come up with what the best remaining options were. And I think, quite frankly, the southern route around the railroad tracks I don't think works for anybody for any number of reasons. It shouldn't work for Dominion for practical and for cost reasons. I've been pretty vocal about my personal opinion on this. I think that route was chosen very carefully as one of the most obnoxious routes they could possibly think of to generate as much public opposition to it as they could so they could get the route where they really wanted to put it. Again, I'm a skeptic and a cynic, and if I had to bet the mortgage, I'll bet they wanted to put it on 66 in the first place. What's interesting is they tried to draw us into one of those wonderful games that large utilities and large corporations play, where they try to play neighborhood against neighborhood. They wanted to initiate a Green Hill Crossing, Somerset Crossing versus Piedmont war. You're not willing to put it here, but how about put it over here? And what are you going to say to these people? Are you going to support us? And we're like, no, you're not pulling us into that. Like I said, I think the way we drafted this was, here are the weaknesses in all of these things that make these particular routes unviable. The one on the southern side of 66 is almost as unviable just because of the number of houses that you would have to demolish to put it in. And here's your remaining viable alternative. Here's how we'd like to see it tweaked. And in this way, you're not going to have objection, we don't think. But it's the least of all possible evils. And it gives everybody a way out. Now, does the SEC take that into consideration? I would certainly hope so. It seems that they have taken that type of input in the past, particularly with some of the applications in Northern Virginia, and forced Dominion to do something that they didn't necessarily want to do in the outset. But that's why it's drafted this way.
Do they have the easement on 66?
My understanding, I've got the date in the report somewhere, but I think it was October 10th. October 10th. At some point in time, they have approached VDOT to seek permission to place the transmission lines underground on the north side of the highway. What's interesting is they've already placed the fiber lines to Amazon in the southern right-of-way. It wasn't Dominion that did it; it was another contractor, but that's already been taken care of. And it's my understanding that VDOT's not going to give them much of an issue with placing them in the northern right-of-way.
That would be great. Just to answer your question, Councilman Morris, I think you were asking the width?
The easement is what, 120?
Well, actually, for the overhead, it could be anywhere from 120 beyond.
Right.
On the underground, I did a little research, and it was anywhere from 3 feet to 30 feet. However, Dominion has said it would probably be a 50-foot swath.
They've come down from that down to 40, I believe.
Okay.
On their most recent drawing.
Right. So the impacts are much less regarding that pathway.
Okay. Any other questions for Mr.
Very good report.
Thank you.
Yep, I agree. I think, what's the next step we go forward with? Because and this is just my opinion, being in Green Hill Crossing, having watched the houses go up for sale within a week, they're under contract. Boom, boom, boom. I now have 2 just down the road from me that have been on the market for over a month because real estate agencies, people are already figuring out that there could be 230 kilowatts bouncing through that neighborhood. It's already affecting the property in our town. So I think we need to go forward.
Right. Well, we'll have some update, too, from our meeting with Dominion Power. So
But I still have just a couple more questions.
Go ahead.
No, but actually, I mean, for me, I think it's very important, Bob, that we include the reliability issue in the report if we can, as much as possible. Because frankly, a lot of the arguments are going to be very difficult, even from the environmental perspective, the wetlands, the floodplains, all of that stuff. It'll be a good argument, the health issue. I mean, I can go on, but I think the reliability issue is probably one of the areas where at least gives us a little bit more chance of success than other issues.
Practicality versus emotion.
Well, I'm talking about
The underground reliability.
Well, I'm thinking reliability by hardening their systems underground.
I would have loved to have put that in the report, and if I wasn't quite as under the gun time-wise, I would have spent a lot more time researching the issue. The problem is, I don't know where that data exists to support that claim.
Okay.
My suspicion it lies somewhere within the JLARC report and somewhere within Dominion stuff, and there might be some stuff from other states. If I had enough lead time to generate that data, I'd be more than willing. I could redraft the entire report for y'all's signature. That's not a big deal. It's going to change planning commission to town council. I just don't know where the data to support that assertion lies. We found all the other stuff. It's a question of time. We did this with the understanding that the earliest Dominion was going to go forward was the end of this month, or the end of next month. Personally, I don't see that happening. I think we've got a lot more time now.
Actually,
we could go back and tweak it.
If I could just short-circuit that, I believe the latest we've heard is now January.
Yeah.
So that might give us a little extra time to tweak that if possible.
Yeah, it was January.
Right, January. Yeah, and I think that would help our case, and I would certainly be happy to work with you. I've talked to a number of experts in the field that I used to work with up in New York. There are other things that are happening that the federal government are paying for and that the state of New York is working on to provide a underground high-voltage transmission line from Ontario, actually Quebec, down to New York City. And most of that is going to be underground because of the hardening issues and reliability issues. And that is part of Governor Cuomo's stated policy to perhaps decommission Indian Point Nuclear Power Plant. So there may be some kernels of information in there that could help us.
Actually, if the state of New York has gone to that extent, there's a study out there somewhere.
Right, exactly.
Like I said, we got into a time crunch, and it was
Right.
A lot of this was low-hanging fruit.
Well, I mean, the fact of the matter is they're pushing it out another couple of months based on their previous timeline. So I think it makes sense to take another crack at it and tweak that.
Can I?
Yeah.
I mean, we can go forward with this information. We can always add to it. I mean, there's nothing concrete, anything that, I mean, or we can delay, and then if we need to, come in and do a special meeting and have one done. We've basically already got one right here for us. So, I mean, we can delay it, try to add more to it. You can have a meeting anytime. You just need to call it.
But
If for some reason they push up the date, is what I'm saying. If we,
Well, they have. You know, they pushed it back to.
I meant push it up, bring it back.
No, I don't
Right,
see
I don't
that
see
happening.
that happening. But
I
what
think
I'm
they've
saying
got
is,
some other
so
conflicts related to the project. So we did have an opportunity to meet with them with all the HOAs, and they stated publicly that it was going to get pushed back to January.
They're definitely in the January timeframe.
which is not helping anybody's property value, I might add. The longer this plays out, the more it's
Well,
going to.
there's some good encouraging news, so we can definitely pass that along
I think it would be good, though, as you were suggesting, Joe, to have something concrete, something that we can win on. Because they could fight us on the environmental issues and any other issues, but this one is concrete, where you could back it up with research and maybe delay it a few weeks.
Well, it's money.
Perhaps.
Money is what's
I mean, it's
going
worth a shot. I mean,
So
we don't.
what you think?
I'm more than willing to tweak it. I'm comfortable with it, with the January timeframe too. Again, I was skeptical of the November timeframe in the first place, but it's just a matter of pulling that data together. I know where to get it. It's just squeezing the time in. We could probably. I can't see the calendar from here. We could probably have a revised report second week of December. That gives us, what, 5 weeks?
David, excuse me, Bob. I think now Dominion's going to come back to us again, right?
Yeah, they were waiting for us. If I told them if it took calling a special meeting just for that purpose of meeting with them, so we could do maybe after the report.
Yeah, I
They
think.
were waiting on us to talk to our PC. We wanted to to PC before
Right.
we ever met
Yeah,
with them.
that's basically what I think you said to them. But I'm just thinking about the timing of all of that. I mean, we certainly would like to have something in our pocket before they come back here.
Absolutely.
So we would have like a template from which to raise our concerns and questions yet again.
Yeah. So maybe like sometime in the first weeks of December.
Is that too late, you think? First week in December?
Jen, when's the town council meeting for?
She is on the 1st.
So the
We could set a meeting right now, like with the planning commission, discuss it as a group.
Is there any way we could get this report done before the next meeting? For the next work session?
the work session would be November, what, 24th?
That's where, I think, because
Three and
with
a
the
half weeks.
holidays, with everything going on,
Excuse me,
I
let me
hate to
take a
push
look
it
at
too
the calendar.
close.
Lots of coffee. Lots of coffee.
I mean, we have the foundation of it, you know, Mr. Weir and the PC has put together the foundation. What we're doing is just looking at, you know, the collecting data for the underground, you know, versus overhead.
I think that would help. It would help the
I
area.
really think so.
Steve, any thoughts?
If we have the time, I'd rather give Bob the time he needs to do it right, rather than pushing it too quickly, since it doesn't sound reasonable that they're going to try anything before January.
The thing, though, is that if we submit something to them on the 15th of December, they're not seeing it until the 3rd, 4th, 5th of January. I just don't see the point in submitting something to them anytime after the 10th of December.
They're already going to have a decision made.
I think the laugh indicates that he thinks they already have made a decision,
Right.
but we won't go there.
Right, but we still have to be armed with
Absolutely.
our views.
I think that would be very helpful. What do you think, Bob?
Could it be done by the second week of November through the Planning Commission? Yes. Would it be done to my liking? No. And I can't draft it and pass it through. I need the entire Planning Commission to do it. So I think the earliest that we could do it safely and have something that's properly documented and properly researched is probably the 8th of December. If you want to add that subset of facts in there. But yeah, I'm comfortable saying we could have it by December 8th. I don't think there's any particular rush. I think Dominion knows where we stand. I think they know. Yes, ultimately this will go to Dominion, but ultimately it's not being written for Dominion. It's being written for the State Corporation Commission. And it's sort of Dominion knows that, and they're going to anticipate that. So whether we give it to them 10 days before they make their route known to the SEC or 10 months before, I don't think it's going to ultimately make a whole lot of difference, because I think these comments are already being incorporated into their presentation as it stands. At least I would certainly hope so.
Good.
Okay.
Good with the 8th.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
I free to go?
No, not yet. I actually have a question for you, separate from all of this.
Well, let me just say thank you, Bob.
Yes.
You guys,
Thank you so much for your
y'all
work.
did a great job on this.
That's what we're here for.
Bob, you mentioned before the fact of our town not using the local charter and using the authority that we have as far as it relates to developments 1 mile outside of the town limits. And it is in our charter, but how do we get that in place? How do we resort to reverting to use it to our advantage? Because what I'm seeing, and I'm glad, I'm not saying this because our guests have left, but what I'm seeing is that all these developments are coming in. We have one inside the town and now one outside the town, and I would love to know that we have some ammunition that would protect us in that case. So how do we use that as the ammunition?
Ultimately, you have to talk to the gentleman in the striped tie. But I'm going to get up on my soapbox here for a minute because I've been on this soapbox before. If you want to be a real player in what happens with the county, it's all nice to send them nice letters and recommendations, and the situation is much better under Supervisor Canlin than it was previously. He's willing to work with the town. But at the end of the day, unless you've got some leverage, you're just writing letters. The town, under its charter, has the authority, or has the right, I don't think authority is the right word, has the right to review all subdivisions of parcels or properties within a mile of the town. And prior to the town's review and approval of those subdivisions, they're not supposed to be recorded with the circuit court, if my understanding of the charter is correct. It's not something the town has ever done. There has been a fight amongst town councils going back more than a decade as to whether we needed to exercise that authority or not, or whether it was prudent to exercise that authority or not. And it's going to be incumbent on this council to make that same decision. I would point out several things. If you avail yourselves of that charter provision and want to do that with the circuit court, it's going to involve the circuit court playing ball, and currently they do not. They refuse to tell us when these things are coming in. They claim they have database deficiencies, computer deficiencies. It's the same argument they use with the town when they can't. When we ask them how much money does the circuit court owe us from fines, well, our computer system won't tell us. Similar story, but the other thing is, if you go down that route, it's going to have to be with everybody. Now, there will be an expense to the town in exercising that authority. The subdivision plats are going to have to be reviewed by somebody, either town staff, or you're going to have to farm it out. But by the same token, there is a fee in place for that. It's designed to at least recover the costs associated with that. So, quite frankly, the way it generally works, it's actually probably revenue positive to some degree at the end of the day. But it would force a lot more cooperation, not so much with the County Board of Supervisors, but with the County Planning Office and the County Land Development Office, who have been very loath to deal with anybody from the town, be it professional staff, Planning Commission, Town Council member, Mayor. I mean, it's something to explore if you really want to get a handle on what's going on around us, and it's going to probably be, at least in my view, something you're going to want to do probably in the very near future, given what's going to happen as the hospital starts to fill out, because you're going to have a lot of office development and a lot of other types of development in support of the hospital in the very near future, or at least I would certainly hope so.
Well, we may not always have a candle in office, but Marshawn, what's your views on it?
I'll respectfully disagree a little bit. What's the old, as my dad used to say, you have the right to do it, but doesn't mean it's the right thing to do. And I think what it would serve would be to perhaps delay. I mean, our subdivision review of county plans would be based on their ordinances. So you'd have to have someone that's savvy to their ordinances. And at the end of the day, if they met the ordinances, you'd have to approve them. So I think it's more of perhaps like more of a seat at the table, so to speak, and that's a delay involved. You know, if someone's wanting to move expeditiously, that it slows them down. But I don't know if, you know, certainly if council wants to discuss it amongst themselves, I just don't know that it would be necessarily well received at the county level. We have had some success, staff to staff. You know, the planning director we've met with, some of the other project managers we've dealt with. So we are repairing. I would say that we are repairing that relationship with them. But
Old Pace School.
What's that?
The Old Pace School would be a good
The
example.
Pace School is a good solution. So yeah, it's one of those things where, you know, if it came down to where there was a good reason for us to really pursue that, I guess we could look at it. But I see it kind of
Negative.
working at cross purposes of what we're trying to achieve. I do understand it. I've certainly experienced it before, where we spend a lot of time and resources writing nice letters. But I do feel at this point we would have some standing with that. So anyway, that's my response.
All right,
Thanks.
thank you, sir. Good. Any other questions?
I was going to
Sorry.
weigh in
Oh,
a
yes,
little bit
Holly.
on that as well.
Sure.
I think some of the relations with the Prince William County staff have been getting better. As a matter of fact, when I went to the kickoff meeting for our fairgrounds TIA, traffic impact analysis, there was a county representative there. And talking with her, she was, and talking with people, they were like, do you send your plans to the county? And I was like, no, we historically don't. And even her response was, you know, if you just want our help or input, you know, let us know. So that's what I'm trying to say is I see that there's been some of the staff relation. Now, this is not the department, but just the regular staff interactions have been getting better. And I would like to see us pursue that route before we drop a hammer and ruin that.
To that end, I will admit that the relations have gotten much better in recent years since the planning director was replaced with the current planning director, who has been much more in tune with the town and very open. He responds to my phone and email virtually within minutes. So,
And I got to add, across the board, there has been improvements to the police department, PC, you know, architectural review. It seemed like there has been some improvements over the past months and even year of just improvements in communication.
particularly with the county, I'd have to agree. At this point in time, we'll see how long it lasts.
Well, let's keep the momentum going.
Yeah. Any other comments for Bob regarding this report? Okay.
Now am I free to go?
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks, Bob.
Thank you.
We'll see y'all.
Do we need to take a short break or anything like that, or are we good to keep on drilling through?
Mr.
Keep going.
Mayor, I need to leave at 7 regardless, so
Okay.
you may see me just walk out.
Not a problem. We'll just keep forging forward then.
Hey, Councilman
Uh,
Morris, come
yeah.
back. Let's pound through.
Yeah.
Mr. Vanderpool, we can still add, I don't know.
We'll go ahead and go through our agenda. Our minutes, of course, we'll keep our standing thing. If we see any changes to send to Jen.
Guess we'll put that in the consent agenda.
Yes. We have our public hearing for 6864 St. Paul. I'll take the recommendation also to put in consent unless we hear otherwise.
That you will need to,
No, that's
that's not part of the public hearing. It's a joint public hearing with the planning commission.
Correct.
That'll be Monday night.
Yes, sir.
Our special use permit, Rashad.
Same application, Mr. Mayor.
Right. Our surplus property, recommendation from Chief Smith.
That's straightforward, the recommendations.
Can I ask a question about that? My only question related to that is, we're absolved of any liability associated with any of those transactions? The
I
town?
assume so because it's going to it's going to the county's forensic lab.
Okay. I mean,
But,
if that's the
um,
case, then I'm fine with that, too. I just had that curious question.
Yeah, the key here is that they're not worth selling on the open market, even though we have the option of doing that. And they're also not necessarily liability, but there's concerns of police departments selling firearms and that they've recovered. But they're really not worth much. So donate, it's basically melt them down or donate them to a worthy cause, and this appears to be a very worthy cause.
Okay. Sounds reasonable.
All right.
Consent on that, Mayor?
Yes. Comprehensive plan update.
Wait,
Wait a
one
minute.
more.
We have another surplus.
Sorry. Oh, yes, right, for the rifle. Sorry.
Now, this is one where it appears that we're going to try to sell it?
Yes. This one, the rifle is actually worth something. Being a rifle and not a handgun, there's less opportunity for it to be used in a nefarious way. And the person that donated it to us is willing to take it back, sell it, and then give us the proceeds of that.
Nice.
And so we're not doing it ourselves. It's a licensed firearms dealer that would be doing that.
And again, I guess the same question about liability. I mean, since that firearms dealer is going to be handling the transaction.
And there's a licensed firearm dealer.
That's the one we got
Again,
it from in the first place.
Yeah, exactly. So that, okay.
Okay. Item D, the comprehensive.
Consent, Mr. Mayor?
Yes. Comprehensive plan update.
Okay. I'm going to use my microphone like this. So, okay, we've gotten several questions from the commission and from others about the status of the comprehensive plan update. I'm going to switch over here to my map. What's that? Come on down. Welcome to Haymore. Okay. Exactly. Thank you very much. So, you remember in orientation, I told you a goal without a plan is just a wish, right? So our comprehensive plan is mandated by the state, and it basically, and I've given you a kind of the general tenets of the comp plan, which is basically a inventory of what we have, inventory from our historic districts to our natural resources, to our soils, to our public infrastructure, all those types of things, puts a vision together, and then gives basically goals and action strategies on how to execute. As you may recall, your CIP you just adopted recently had a line item for putting $250,000 into the town center property. What's that?
Yeah, we went up.
Excuse me, $500,000. That came partially from our plan, but our comprehensive plan still says we're down at the Hanover properties. So as we evolve and disconnect, as we evolve, we have to update those ordinances. So in 2008, we did a pretty significant overhaul of the comprehensive plan, updated the data, put the vision together. Remember, many of you may remember the charrette that we had done, put the goals and action strategies into play. The state requires you to revisit it every 5 years, and what the commission has done is begun to review that. Again, for practical updates, for instance, we're no longer moving the town center down to Hanover, we're moving it down here. The intent wasn't really to overhaul the document, it was simply to update it to make sure it's the most current document. Yes, sir?
Public input on that review?
So once the commission completes its work, it'll make a draft, it'll schedule a public hearing, have that public hearing, and then send its recommendation to you for hearing. Now, what's come out of this is what I understand, there's been some interest by some owners wanting to deal specifically with the land use map. So remember, the plan, part of the plan is your vision, and this is your land use map, which creates your vision, and then your zoning ordinance is your instructions. So if someone comes in and wants to have a piece of property rezoned from one use to another, one of your criteria is you go and say, well, does this match up with what our vision says? And you have the ability that if it doesn't meet your vision, that you can recommend denial of it. Now, anyone can come in and ask to rezone their property, and you could approve it or deny it. But this is a tool that lends itself to you making a decision. So real quickly, west to east. West side, you have your planned interchange park in the beige. This is meant to deal with the transient public. It's auto-oriented, a lot of service uses. Light industrial in the gray. By its sounds, it's an employment use, general manufacturing. It's more or less been our sportsplex types of uses, but nonetheless, we have that use category. Along the south is our conservancy. district, which limits a lot of development, aligns with our floodplain by the creek. Kind of on the perimeter, we'll see in the light blue is the moderate density, that's your single-family residential. The darker blue is your, at one point we had a multifamily, also your towns and your small lot single-family. This should actually be blue. Areas in pink, kind of moving to the east side real quick, is our public uses. That's our Hanover properties and Pace West. And then what came out of the 2008 plan was a transitional commercial district. And implied by its name is you're transitioning from kind of your residential into your downtown core, which is in yellow. The area in yellow is your town center district, and by its name, it's the town center area. Buildings are supposed to be pedestrian friendly, bring it to the street. A lot of your, again, service uses, but things that cater to the local township, centered around this area. So as you see, the areas that were designated transition, again, transitioning from kind of your intense commercial uses into the town center, as you see from the east and west. It talks about adaptively reusing buildings that are there today, a lot of your residential structures. You see a lot of residential structures along Fayette. You see a lot, you have the church here, but you have some of the other houses that are there, and also deals with compatibility. So at the time that the council took it up in 2008, the language was really designed to deal with these properties here between St. Paul Drive and Madison Street. And there's language specifically in the ordinance that talks about reusing these buildings for lower density or intensity of uses, your medical offices, maybe your dentists, some other folks like we see in elsewhere in town. It was generally felt at the time that any development of this as commercial would negatively affect the residential back on Madison Court, and ultimately the commission or the council decided not to adopt a change to the land use map. The commission looked at it, again felt that it wasn't appropriate to designate it for transitional commercial, and then this is something you'll revisit once the recommendation comes to you.
So they currently looking at that?
No, they looked at, part of their review is to look at the land use map, and there was no recommendations to change the land use map.
So for like the three properties that Mr. Watts and one of them, I think.
Correct, these properties here.
Right,
correct.
Okay.
So you would want to do it comprehensively. You'll hear the term in some of your training, spot zoning. There's a tendency in a small town too, where folks come up and they petition and say, this is what I want to do with my property. But there's tools in the toolbox to do it. This is one tool. If you designate a property like these folks that come in, most of them are commercial, some are residential. If they come in and say, I want to rezone my property, we would say, okay, I want to go to commercial. Well, this land designation is a commercial district. That's something we would support. In this case, if these properties were to come in for a rezoning right now, this tool is in conflict with that. This would say, well, no, we envision residential there, and we would not recommend that you approve of that development. So it's just it's a step. So in that regard, if the council wants to look at that, once the commission sends its recommendation to you, you could consider that change or that recommendation for those properties. So, yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Speaking to a member of the Planning Commission at one of our Planning Commission meetings, has Mr. Watts ever formally submitted paperwork to have those rezoned from residential to commercial?
Not that I'm aware of. So.
I think there needs to be some investigation, looking deeper into it, because I think there's some miscommunication along the way. He said, she said, he did.
There's definitely
There's history, and a lot of one of the challenges I've had since I've taken this job, that a lot, to be candid with you, a lot was done on a handshake and a wink. And that was just the nature of how the town operated then. In this case, the council doesn't want to be in the habit of rezoning folks' property. You can set up the tools that they can come in and request to rezone their property to match the plan, but generally you don't want to be in the business of rezoning folks unless you do it comprehensively. There has to be, at the point that this zoning map was created, obviously they had to rezone people's property. But generally, as a rule, individual property owners, you don't want to be in the habit of rezoning their property. So,
and this is where we're going to rely on you to bring in that balance for your expertise and your background.
Okay.
Just in order, when the PC brings things to us, you're bringing things to us from your expertise to be able to waive it and then make a decision.
Gotcha. Now, It's a bureaucracy and it takes time. So the point that these landowners are anxious for you to start talking about it, we're not quite there yet. The commission wanted to take or finish its work on the Dominion power line. The reason why I think they wanted to do that was at the point that the council decides it wants to be a witness, one of its documents, it could say, well, look, we just adopted this plan that takes a position on power lines. And so that's been the delay bringing it forward. You also have the ability as a council to do plan amendments on your own initiative. If you wanted to simply do an amendment to the land use map and look specifically at this, you have the ability to do that too.
So we could send that request to the planning commission? For example, say for those 3 properties, we could send that request to the planning commission?
Well, right now it's coming to you.
Right.
If there's an interest in not waiting for that exercise to end, you can initiate a plan amendment on your own that would stand alone. And that would require you to send it to the planning commission. They would have to have a public hearing just on that issue, and then it would come back to you for public hearing. But at this point, by the time you got there, you may have the full comp plan back to you anyway.
Right.
So we don't move as fast as people would like sometimes.
And that recommendation could be different than what the council decides. For example, if they...
Correct. I mean, they've already made in its earlier deliberations of this land use map, they've said, well, they think their recommendation is that the land use is appropriate the way it is today. I think there's some value in the conditions have changed. I think it's worth looking at whether or not a transition is appropriate. The sizes are such that, I think you could only get a low intensity use there.
Right.
And that only entitles people to do it. They would to get there. They have to come in and rezone it. Rezoning is a public hearing exercise, so you would have the ability still, even if you planned a transitional commercial, the council would still have some control over those individual properties that came in and wanted to rezone it. I'm sorry.
Okay. Sorry.
I just can mention there've been a number of topics tonight that involve zoning and land use.
I'm sorry.
That's a very complicated subject, and I think this council, as a new council, has not had to deal with that. It's an area that we have identified as one that is most fraught with liability and can be very expensive. It's also one where precedent has a lot of value, and doing the homework before making a decision is really critical. For example, acting in a comprehensive manner as opposed to selecting just a small number of properties puts you in a much more defensible position from a legal perspective than on picking out 2 or 3 and then moving on an ad hoc basis from that perspective.
Right.
I would also say to you that in the last session of the General Assembly, there was a decision or a new statute that was created based on the Kuntz decision out of the United States Supreme Court that created monetary damage liability for jurisdictions under certain circumstances in zoning cases, including the requirement to pay attorney's fees, and included a presumption that if you took a position that was based on an unconstitutional basis, that the court will presume you're wrong, and you have to prove to the contrary. And the standard is not just the normal standard, is you have to prove by clear and convincing evidence. So there's a number of things in the land use arena, the whole question of subdivisions, and taking on the question of whether or not you want to get into the subdivision business and what you can do and what your expectations are, what the expectations of the public may be if you take that on, what liability you're assuming if you take that on. So what I was going to recommend, if you or the council would like, would be that it might be appropriate for us to do a little bit of an educational session just around these land use issues, because they're all interrelated. There's some changes going on in the law, and we're now very concerned about liability issues. I was at a conference last week on this, and I've spoken on this actually at the statewide level. So we'd be happy to bring that for you, because I think it's important to have a framework as you're looking at all of these decisions, as opposed to now we're talking about comprehensive plan, here we're talking about subdivisions, we have a special use permit over here, we have a zoning over there. And so I think it might be helpful to have a kind of a context in which to put all of these land use decisions.
All right.
Great idea.
Go ahead.
Hopefully he's not going to kick me after the hopefully he's not going to kick me after the meeting. But that's where we are. You have the tools in your toolbox. As elected officials, you have folks that want to come to you and approach to you. You just got to remember that there's a process, there's tools in your toolbox, there's correct ways to go about it. Well, yeah, you just got to be careful, because there is, spot zoning. People can talk about spots. Anyway, I'll move on from that. So that's where we are. If the commission wants to finish up its Dominion discussion, we'll bring the update to you. We also allocated money in the budget for on-call planning services. This is one of the tasks we wanted them to look at, was to not completely overhaul. We don't need a Cadillac land use plan, so to speak. We did have volunteers put the original plan together. It may be worth having a consultant look at it comprehensively, take us through the process, and come back, but that would be as a future exercise. The purpose of this update is just simply take those references out of the plan that are no longer relevant, like the town center at the Hanover property. So this doesn't need any action from you, Mr. Mayor. This is simply more of a information item.
Okay. Appreciate that. Great, thank you. Okay, moving on, our...
Mayor,
Yes.
if I can inject and maybe ask the attorney if it's possible to add to the calendar a closed session meeting for an issue that we need to probably just don't want to wait for another week to share with the council members, if it's possible.
To tonight's?
Yes, sir.
Yes, yeah. Not unless there's objection by the council, we can add that. So I think it takes a motion.
It will take a motion to go into executive session.
But to it.
And whenever you're prepared to take up that motion.
Right,
Well,
okay. Say at the end?
Yeah.
Yes,
That would be fine.
definitely.
Okay.
Definitely.
Good
Thank
deal.
you.
Okay.
Oh, what, tonight?
Yeah,
Okay.
Our next one is our sign ordinance assessment.
I'm back. Oh. I can put this down now. Okay, so the parking study, you maybe remember you commissioned this last spring. The consultant brought the final product to the commission who initiated the study. We'll certainly get copies to you. What we wanted to do is piggyback on that effort. They did quite a lot of stakeholder meetings and outreach. So we figured with that working knowledge, they could probably quickly address the sign ordinance. This was two of the low-hanging fruit I had spoken to you about, had the most bang for the buck. Most businesses looking to come into town had problems with the parking ordinance and the sign study. So what we've included in here, well, first let me back up. On that parking study, the commission next month is going to start considering the draft ordinance language that was included with that study. So that'll be moving forward. Similar fashion to this, where we have a draft motion in there to go ahead and use this contract to do an addendum and allow them to go ahead and knock out a sign analysis. There is a draft motion 1B that talks about where those monies would come from and the amount not to exceed. But we do have money in the budget that we'd allocated for these sorts of services and analyses. So we're just looking for a favorable action by the council at the council meeting.
Question? You answered my first question, budget impact.
Mm-hmm.
The second question relates to, I understand the efficiency of the add-on. That makes a lot of sense.
Mm-hmm.
But how comfortable are you with their expertise relative to this issue?
Very comfortable. I work with these folks quite frequently in my field, and they're well regarded and well respected as being capable. So.
Okay. Any other questions? All right.
Do you all want this to be brought back up for Monday, or would this be appropriate to go on our consent agenda?
I would want it to be brought back up Monday, just to review it a little bit more.
Okay, fair enough.
And we also, as a staff, need to bring back to you the line item from which it would come and also the dollar amount it would not exceed.
That would be helpful.
Vote on that separately then. Okay. Next item, our town events coordination. So we had Oktoberfest came and went.
Yes.
With, I understand, little problems. No lost kids. No major issues.
Not that I know of. Traffic, still an issue, but that's not what we're here prepared to talk about tonight. But as far as I know, it did go. It was successful. It was a little bit different. Actually, I did get a chance to speak to our gracious hosts, and they had so much fun. They said we'd love to do some more stuff like that. So that'd be Fauquier Bank. But Ellen thought it was a lot of fun, and it had its advantages and disadvantages. It's always great whenever we can shut down the town for an event. But that comes with its pros and cons for both those who are participating and for those who are not looking to participate. So I think it's something we move forward, which kind of brings us to our topic of tonight with regard to events coordination. I do have here to hand out, I do apologize, we did not get into the council agenda, our report and recommendation, which we can certainly take up at next Monday's meeting.
Okay. So this would be the meeting that you had a meeting regarding the events coordination.
But they bring it all in-house.
Right.
Thank you, sir.
I guess we're looking at just to be able to review this over the next few days.
Well, you can. I'm going to basically just walk you through it here really briefly, but I would suggest that it'd be appropriate to probably just wait till Monday to take action on it. The subcommittee did meet last week and had an active discussion about the positives and negatives with regard to handling event coordination in-house, basically under our administration, or request proposals for the third-party coordinators. The committee has recommended that we do bring events coordination in-house. However, the committee did suggest that we consider releasing an EOI, or an expression of interest, to determine the interest of bringing a third-party event coordinator to town. In other words, opening it up to a public interest process, almost like an RFP, not a request for proposals, but more of an expression of interest. Here's basically where we come to you this evening, which is what we need some, basically some direction on. Is this something the council would want to consider? I'd suggest that you all take a few minutes to discuss that tonight at the work session. I think the only known drawback that we'd have is this would add additional time to getting started in either direction. If we go out for bid, you're probably looking at a process that'll take us through till January, the start of the new year. If we take it in-house, we now can start the process of moving forward, knowing that that's the direction we're going to go in. Now, either way, we would be able to move forward, but I just need to know what the pleasure of the council is with regard to putting out an expression of interest.
Okay. Let's kind of go around the table here. I'll start with Matt. Your thoughts?
On the outset, I like the idea of bringing it in. We have seemingly maybe have a little more control. I guess my question is, what is the purpose of these events? I think I know the purpose of the events, but what do we try to accomplish with the events in general? Because in talking to some of the neighboring businesses and even some of the citizens between our last meeting, I'm trying to think how one lady put it. She made reference to, it seems like it's a lot of little vendors handing out a lot of business cards, and it doesn't have the feel of Occoquan Days or something like that, where it's more community-oriented as opposed to everybody peddling their wares. I guess that was the comment that I got. So what are we trying to accomplish by having these events? Which I guess would lend itself to who orchestrates them.
I think there's a couple different answers, really, to that question. Really, in the grand scheme of things, and I know our planner would also like to comment to this, but events are really they're what mark the town. It's about community building. And I think the intent of the start of these events was really to showcase local businesses. I think some local businesses have thrived, and I think at the same time some local businesses have been hurt. I think it's a matter of making sure that you actually get a good balance with regard to moving forward. One of the things that we discussed in detail at the events coordination subcommittee is that we had to keep our mind focused on the fact that we don't have to solve the answer of what are our events going to be today. The idea was more of which direction do we want the events to be administered. There's, as we discussed, there's lots of pros and cons. We felt it would be an exhaustive effort to put all of that into a report, to be honest with you. It's one of those things where a lot of the positives that come out of handling in-house, you really could flip it around, and as long as we have good communication and excellent accountability, you could work with a third-party event coordinator to make sure you're achieving the goal, the desired outcomes of these events. With that being said, we'd be, for lack of a better way to say it, foolish to think that if we just take it over in-house, we're immediately going to solve all of our problems. We're not. We're going to still have headaches. There's still going to be things that we can that you can't predict or you can't control. And so, the issue really is, as we move forward, what are the events for? And the event, I think the answer for that is really for the community as a whole, community building and community collaboration and celebration of our community in general. And so how we get there and what we do to make that happen is still, I think, yet to be determined. But I think in general, that's why we do events. Marchant, did you have anything to add?
I guess I'm more of a practical answer. Is our marquee event was Haymarket Day. That's what we're known for. It was run by the Ruritons. It was, and I'm reading from the comp plan right now, it was a marquee event that set us apart from Occoquan with its spring and fall craft shows, and Percival with the Bluemont series. So its inception was just a Haymarket Day. And that was, 20 years in the making now, right? Most of you have been around here 26 years in the making, 1989. And that became our marquee and known event. Later on, when I first moved in here in 2004, the Earth Day did a small celebration event. And I think what's important to remember is the point we had a private venue come in and start running these events. They came to us. They came to the town and said, this is something we'd like to get started. And it kind of, there was really not in my recollection, just kind of a barrel of ideas were thrown out there and said, hey, we could do a Haymarket Day, we could do a car show day. And over time, I think to your point, it kind of lost its luster. Each event blended with the next. So I think, there was original talk of, Oktoberfest would just be German foods. The car show would simply be vendors that would cater to the car business. Same with the Earth Day, Earth products and things like that. It may have been a function of the fact that it was a for-profit group, and there's been some criticism there that maybe the volume was necessary to make those viable. But to your original point, it was meant to be Haymarket having its moment in the year was, the start was Haymarket Day. Right. And it's just more from there. But the idea was market the town, be service-oriented, highlight the businesses, and it's gotten larger from there.
I guess the reason I ask that, to me, sometimes less is more. Mm-hmm. And given the fact that the traffic being what it is, and Oktoberfest comes really pretty closely on the calendar to Haymarket Day, mm-hmm. I think maybe we need to use zero-based budgeting. Looking, why are we doing what we're doing? We're doing that in every area of our town, which I'm all for. I'm all for Haymarket Day, having lived in this town since like 96. Mm-hmm. I just think we need to take it back what it was when I was a resident, almost 20 years ago, where it's more of a family community feel. Not people coming in from all over Northern Virginia to sell a hot water heater,
gutter, helmet.
Gutter. I just think it's become vendor alley. That's just my opinion, as opposed to promoting our local businesses. I think we're kind of cutting off our nose to spite our face, to use just a coined term. So if we're bringing it back to its original intent, where less is more, where we have one marquee event and maybe like a holiday theme, something on a smaller scale, I'm all for the town bringing it back in-house. If we're going to continue to expand, we're more days, I don't think we have the manpower to pull that off. So I like your analogy of one marquee event that we're known for. And I just think we've become so many events. I think if this traffic was impacted one day a year, I think we're going to get a lot less criticism than if we're impacting it 6, 7, 8 times a year. I don't want to belabor it, but I think it's lost its original intent, that's all I'm saying.
And again, I don't know if there was any requirement that they had to have, other than self-imposed by the operator time. I don't recall ever there being a mandate that they had to have that many events. It's just the way it panned out. So
Well, that's all I'm saying.
within your
You gotta
discretion to
look
do
at
it.
that.
Anyway. Okay, Mr. Cottle, I'm actually want to hear from Jen. Jen's been here for a long time, and I would respect your opinion and your thoughts since you've kind of seen this. You've seen councils come and grow. You've seen actually mayors come and go. So
yeah, I appreciate that,
Yeah.
Mayor. One of the things that we did, I think it was about 2008, we held business outreach meetings. It was a passion of Mayor Stutz. We started it going. So we held these breakfast business outreach meetings, of which in attendance were our current events coordinators. They were a business in the town. We had a really good turnouts to those meetings, 30, 40 businesses, and every one of them said, we want more events. Okay. That's where that came from. Mm-hmm. So it didn't, and it blossomed from there, and I think that you're right. Sometimes less is better. Councilman Morris asked in the committee meeting, he felt the meaning had changed too of Haymarket Day, and I talking to the community, and I get a lot of phone calls, and I had a lot of complaints about not having Oktoberfest in the town, having it somewhere else. It wasn't a community event, so a lot of the people, residents in Haymarket, they do want that downtown feel, and they want to have it in the streets. They don't want to have it somewhere else. I think we can all admit that. We had to do what we had to do on this one. But I think the feel, to me, is still there, and it feels the same. I think a little too commercial on the vendor side. I have to agree with you on that. However, you get in a position is when can you say one commercial business can't come and another one can? It's tough. Yes, you can limit it to only town businesses and no one else can come in. You can do those. So I think that I'm excited at least for the opportunity for 1 year to bring it back in-house. I think that there almost would be impossible for us to express in a contract everything we want and don't want out of Haymarket Day. I think there's absolutely no way you can capture everything. And with any vendor, things are going to come up in the moment. We can handle them, and we can change them. But to force another company to change them. So I'm excited about the opportunity to have it for this year. And maybe, I think Councilwoman Swinford said, even if let's just do it for a year. Even if we can't. We can fail just as easily doing it in-house as we could hiring another company to have it done. So we take the year, take a breather, and go from there.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Councilman Woods, any comments or thoughts?
Yeah, I do think that I'm in agreement with Councilman. I'm losing my mind. Matt. With Matt, Councilman Cottle. Yeah, I know. That we do need to clearly define, even just for ourselves, what we want, especially Haymarket Day, but what we want our events to be. And I think that that they should be a showcasing of local businesses. I think they should also be a showcasing of our town's history, of what the area used to be like. I think that that's really gotten lost in all of the vendor world, because Haymarket's not about Verizon trying to sell me Fios, even though I told them I don't want it. Haymarket is about, we are a historic district. We have history. We're proud of that history. So why has that kind of gotten lost in the process? And I think there's a lot of good things going on with the museum, but it's back behind the row of vendors who are selling me Fios. And so people can very easily walk right on by, not even see the museum, not even notice that it's there. So I do think that regardless of the direction we go, we need to know what we're looking for, so that we can go in the right direction. And I was originally hitting the mic. Originally of the opinion that as long as we've got a clear definition of what we want, we could go either way, in-house or an expression of interest. But you did make the valid point that it would be very hard to define every tiny little bullet point of what we want to an outside vendor, whereas someone who's here, who knows the culture, who knows, who we can talk to every day, and they'd have a lot better feel of what we want. So I would be definitely supportive of bringing it in-house. And again, it's been mentioned, doesn't have to be a forever thing. Just because we do it this year doesn't mean we have to do it next year.
Thank you, sir. Councilman Passanelli.
I think our town clerk made a very compelling argument, and I think she belongs up at this dais. Getting back to whether in-house or, for lack of a better term, third party, I'm not going to use it. I'm okay with going in-house. I had some concerns about resources and stretching our staff's resources too far. But I think they've made some compelling arguments. I was behind the idea of an expression of interest only from the perspective of getting some feedback as to who is out there, who's available, and perhaps gaining some information as to how they would plan and what ideas they might have so that perhaps we could use it in-house. All right, and given the timeline, I understand that we would probably want to move quicker to really start to develop a program. So from that perspective, I'm okay with the in-house, and I think that's where I'm leaning. I also think it's important, and it provides us the opportunity to gain some input from the public as to what they would envision Haymarket Day or events that we decide that we want to have. How do they see that transpiring? So that gives us some more opportunity and time to have that public input, and I think that would be important.
All right. Ms. Swinford.
Well, I wanted to go ahead with it right away. I mean, an EOI is great, but the entire staff, hands down, felt very confident that we could bring it in-house. There's a lot of experience already there. Both Jen and Sherry used to do it all the time. So it's not like we're coming in cold. We've got people who have been experienced, who have done it when it was just Haymarket Day, when it really was just what the town, what we wanted to convey to the world. And so we've already got that experience to build upon. So it's a year. What are we going to lose? But we already know that we've done it successfully with the same people who are already here. So I say let's move forward. We can always do an EOI later. It's not like we have to do it right now. But they felt confident. They felt that they would not be stretched too thin. They were already doing most of that job anyways, in just even relaying back and forth with the third-party contractor that we had, in trying to get information back and forth. In fact, they lost control over a lot of things that they wished they could have put information out. So that became a problem too. So I'm all for going forward. I think we all have the same feel that Haymarket Day is about that small town feel where you have the parade down the street and the flags out front and the kids in the parade and, and bringing back just the simple country, small town feel.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Councilman Morse.
I think we have drifted from the main focus of Haymarket Day. I think the previous governance of this event, the previous coordinators have taken us to a stage where, thank God for them. Good job. And I think now it's a good opportunity for us to take it in-house and revisit it, revamp it, get rid of all the fat that has grown on, i.e. Right now it's all about vendors. Right now it's all about how much money, and that's the thing that I hear when I speak I've been out speaking with a couple of vendors who were here at Haymarket Day, and the number one comment is, wow, I made a lot this past Haymarket Day. It's all about how much money they made, and it is geared towards that. And Marshawn, Chuck Carnahan and myself, we volunteer in the early morning of Haymarket Day event by parking the vendors this year in the field. And, one of the things that I noticed was there was a lot of favoritisms. And I think bringing it in-house would eliminate all of that. I don't think there would be a vendor that would tell me, well, Brian told me I could park here. Especially not to me. I don't think they would tell me that. But I think there would be that elimination of all that favoritism, all that elimination of putting a funnel cake in front of Cupcake Heaven. And I'm not being biased because my wife works there, but they take away business from one of, our businesses that's trying to make money to pay their mortgage and to pay the tax, So in the past, we've had a couple of those types of scenarios, and I think bringing it in-house, there would be more accountability, there would be more command and control, there would be individuals who report directly to the town's governance. And I think, I'm in total support of having it moved in-house. And before Matt says something, just hearing what Matt said initially, I think we may even have a chairman to the subcommittee on our hands.
I'm committee down. But, we have a wealth of knowledge here, so I'm all for bringing it back. The most thing I've heard, the biggest complaint from the citizens is basically become vendor row, where I walk down, there's nothing really for my kids to do because it's all about purchasing. That's one overwhelming. And then the second thing, I've spoken to 4 business owners who said we're bringing people to compete with the local business, and if nothing else, they should have the first right of refusal before we bring in various people. So I think bringing it back, I think the previous people did a great job.
They did.
But I think bringing it back, getting back to kind of the roots and letting our town experts be the town experts. So
and then in addition, we have such a prime land right here in front. And I have to say this for the record. I have nothing against drinking beer. But the prime location in our town was reserved and blocked off by a car, reserved and blocked off by an orange and hideous fencing for a beer garden. I don't mind as a matter of fact, I promised one person, we'll still have the beer garden, but it won't be the focus. The beer garden won't be the focus of Haymarket Day. It is not a place to come and get drunk and behave the way that they've behaved in the past. So.
New council going forward. Okay.
Real quick.
All right.
Quick. I also think that it would make sense for our events to kind of coordinate with our land use map, our planned land use map. We've got on that map we've got a concentration of town right in the center of town, and then it kind of transitions outward. And I think that that would be for future events, that would be something to coordinate with.
Yep.
Mr. Mayor, can I say one more thing?
Okay, then I'll get my comment in.
I just would like to point out that someone did already volunteer to chair that committee, and that was myself. So
I second the motion.
I'm just.
This was not a motion on the floor.
I'm just letting you know that I had already volunteered to chair that. Apparently, it was not heard.
Okay, thank you.
Oh no! Before this meeting even happened, sir.
Okay.
At the end of the last meeting.
Bring this back into. I share, I think, every single one of y'all's concerns. I think the town of Haymarket, there's no better organization that will look out for our town other than our town. I think one other point is that we need to tap into the volunteer base that we have in this community. If you all didn't know, like the Haymarket Food Pantry, they have some 400 strong just to get hours in for the students. I mean, it's like a waiting list to be able to just put in your time. And I think once we tap into our community and different organizations, we'll find truly the volunteers that will volunteer to help make the event successful. So just those 2 points.
That's a great point.
Yep. People like to invest in their town. And if they invest in their town, they invest where they live.
Absolutely.
Mr. Mayor, can I just add? I just want to kind of add, the one thing I would call your attention to is under the discussion, under the report, I'm just going to read it for the sake of I basically tried to summarize as best as I could, and there's a whole lot more you could probably put into this. I understand that, but the thing is the subcommittee did overall feel that we felt like bringing it in-house would be our best approach for the coming year. I think there's lots of ways. Once again, I'd remind the council, the biggest thing is we don't have to solve all the hows this evening. What we need from you all is the what, and I think you've kind of wholeheartedly stated the what.
You need a vision.
Yeah. We can actually, I feel like my expertise, I can bring this in and come back together, and actually it's in the motion for approval. We'll come back with a proposal about how are we going to do this in-house? How are we going to make this happen? How is it going to look? It does mean, it could possibly mean, doesn't have to mean, but it could possibly mean the creation of a new position. It could possibly mean the hiring of additional positions. But I haven't been able to really run with the budget to see if those things are even feasible as of yet. I feel like they are, but it's not one of those things until I really get the direction from you all. So I think it's really important that you understand all of your feedback. While it's all important, we're not at that point yet, but that's what we're going to hear, and that's what we're going to concentrate on as we move forward, but we just need to figure out what that is. I think, obviously there is a change, and that's kind of what I'm alluding to with that second bullet point, is that event coordination under the administration of control changes the focus of sponsorships and places a higher value on the events breaking even opposed to turning a profit. The town can better set a scale of each event in an attempt to make each event unique, while at the same time creating positive opportunities for local businesses to be showcased.
Exactly.
I think in general, it's not so much, I think we do need to focus on that one marquee event. That doesn't mean we don't have other side events, but they might be smaller in scale. What's this town known for? It's Haymarket Day. And I don't think there's anything wrong with bringing in the funnel cake guy, but I also think let's make sure we're showcasing our local businesses, because I think that has a lot of the roots to this great event. And so, we're going to take it in-house if that's what your all's wishes are, and we're going to handle it with care. And I think that's the thing that we would really want to convey to the residents.
Okay.
I have one more comment. I just, in my view, I agree with everything you said, Brian. The only thing is, relative to revenue, I don't think that's necessarily mutually exclusive from getting Haymarket back to where it needs to be, Haymarket Day. So I just want to make sure that we keep that in mind as we go forward, from my perspective.
Okay.
Do you all want to consider this? Or, all of you basically spoke. The only one that did not get a chance to speak was Councilman Aiken. So I don't know if you want to take this up on Monday or if you want to send it under consent agenda. Obviously, Councilman Aiken, or Vice Mayor Aiken, I apologize. Vice Mayor Aiken could actually, request to take this off of consent if you so choose.
Yeah, I think we leave it on the consent, and then if there's an objection, to take it off, and we can definitely hear his input as well. Okay. Our Dominion Virginia Power, we asked that to be on a place mark.
You go for it, Mr. Mayor.
Yeah. We did have a meeting with Dominion. This was last week. We had actually representation of some of the homeowners associations, as well as Delegate Black. Delegate Black was not there. Delegate Marshall, and we had a representative from Corey Stewart's office. Out of that meeting, we did find something very positive, that the preferred preliminary draft proposal is no longer the preliminary draft proposal. That they're taking the red line off of that. It's a proposal, but it's not the preliminary. I thought that was very, very good. They also did come up with 3 other alternatives, one of which that they came from the north on 15 and basically came from the south on 15 with overheads. And I'm not sure if that's actually on their website yet, but there were basically four ones that they're now looking at. The Piedmont one, because of the state park, basically took that off its viability list, and that's no longer even being presented. Those were, I think, some very positive things. They continue to listen, I think better understand some of the concerns, and somewhat trying to adjust. And I think the one employee, was his name Jeff, when we brought up different.
Minnesota.
Yeah, he's like a consultant, but you could definitely see that he was concerned with almost every aspect of either environmental or, whatever was presented, how far this house is to the line. I mean, he was definitely a kind of an out-of-a-box thinker that, So that was positive news. Joe, I think you...
Yeah, I think it was really a very constructive meeting, particularly because they did take the red line off. Now, has it been adjusted on the website? We were promised that it would be, so we need to go back and check that out. We would certainly love to get that route off of their proposal altogether when it goes to the SCC, but I don't think that's likely at all. It'll be one of many. I think David and I also shared with them that we would love nothing better than to get behind them and come out publicly in support of a preferred route, thinking more so I-66 along the north side. So we threw that out as a sweetener. We'll see how that goes. But that's kind of like the direction. We're trying to work with them as much as possible and be very positive in the process. Additionally, on the, the legislative side, the county did pass a resolution. David spoke, our mayor spoke very eloquently. I think it was a very positive sign from the county. Our Supervisor Canlon and Corey Stewart, who's been very engaged. And with that, when we met with them prior to the Board of County Supervisors meeting, Mr. Stewart also acknowledged the fact that there'll be some discussions on the legislative side as part of the Richmond legislative agenda that we're going to be pursuing along with Delegate Marshall. And I have to say, Delegate Marshall's been great. He's been our champion and right out there in front trying to help us out. So that's basically where we're at right now.
Right.
There was one other idea that was kind of thrown out there, and that was the idea that I think we spoke about at our last discussion on this issue, possibly going underground throughout the town as a means of not only burying the transmission line, but the distribution lines. They're going to seriously take a look at that and see if it's electrically viable. So perhaps that's another one. I mean, yeah, that could be quite disruptive, but there may be some routes that are beneficial. So I think the bottom line is that this can't be, the burden can't be on us disproportionately. There has to be a win-win for all of us, and consider all the stakeholders, not just the one commercial business to the west side of our town here.
Yep.
So that's about it.
Yep. Okay. Any questions for us? No?
Thank
Okay.
you,
Yeah.
by the way,
Yeah.
for always being there. I mean,
Yeah.
I realize you're doing it as an HOA, as a citizen, as a town council member, but.
Like
thank
Sheriff
you that
Andy,
you're
just
wearing
keep
all
turning
those- thank you
turning
for
the
wearing
hat.
all those hats so
Yep.
that we don't have to be at every meeting.
Right.
We have someone there.
One last comment from this seat. Did anybody else get the mailing from Delegate Marshall's office today with everything going on, which I thought was very well done? So he's reached out to all the townspeople. You should get it in your mailbox.
Yeah. 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 Yes. Okay. I guess we just switch over to our town manager's report. If I think that was one of the last things that we had here. Uh-oh. Yeah.
I will make this relatively brief. I do apologize. Actually, I thought I'd gotten this to Jen, so I'm going to take this one completely. Basically, this is the recommendation for the Harover property master plan. It's a very similar process to what we've done before. Essentially, we actually received two proposals With that regard, we had 2 qualified firms offering their services. Both the town planner and myself reviewed the proposals and are recommending the proposal that best meets the goals of the RFP. Both proposals were very competitive. However, it was determined that this one proposal by Sempoetica, we felt achieved the determined goals of the RFP. With that being said, I'm basically recommending that we move forward with Sempoetica's proposal. I do have it available if anyone would like to see it, but this is to get our Hair-Over master plan process started, which would include addressing some drainage issues.
Yeah, we see we have a motion on the back of there, so maybe I would think we'll leave this off the consent just so that we'll have our Vice Mayor Aiken be able to properly look at this and see what hadn't had a chance opportunity to look at this as well.
That is perfectly fine. It will be in your regular committee, your regular meeting agenda packet.
Great. And speaking on that, just so I don't lose it, there's a resolution that I believe Councilman Passano had sent over about. Yeah, I just want to make sure we didn't get that. We want to make sure that's added to.
Mr. Mayor, just so you know, I was not done with my manager's report. That was just one aspect of it.
Okay.
It won't be long. I'm just letting you know.
Okay. The resolution that I sent over, and we can talk about it a little bit, I guess, or put it in the package.
You want to look for it? I have a question. I could ask him.
I think it's in your folder. You sleeved it.
I did?
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Have we ever used this company before?
Sempoetica? Sempoetica actually is a, they were part of our parking study consultants that also, they were a sub-consultant for the firm that handled the parking study and is also going to be looking to doing the sign ordinances, sign study as well. Sempoetica is their own company. They have partnered once again, so we're very familiar with their work. I think they're extremely qualified. Actually, really what it came down to is, in the grand scheme of things, we had 2 very qualified organizations or consulting firms. But I think really they matched up so well that really came down to the overall budget. And so we considered all the factors involved, along with the professionalism of both. Both are highly professional, but we felt like this would be our best bet.
How many did we send out? RFPs?
RFPs? Well, we submitted.
Submitted how
Oh,
many?
we only received two proposals.
How many did we request?
I'm not sure I'm following
Like,
the question.
We sent it out to 6 companies?
Oh,
Or
no,
is it public?
we advertised this publicly.
Okay.
So how many
So-
responses did we get?
We only received 2 responses for the Hair-Over property.
That's part of the risk.
Yes.
You found it, sir? Because I have another question.
I'm ready to go.
Good, go ahead.
Okay, and I think this is really an important issue because in doing some of my research, what I like to do, and I think some people might find it boring, I read the Federal Register. And I happened to come upon a resolution, a Senate resolution, the U.S. Senate Resolution 479, that our junior senator sponsored and was co-sponsored by Senators Blumenthal from Connecticut and Senator Burr from North Carolina, who is a son of Charlottesville, Virginia, I think. Anyway, the resolution has to do with Veterans Day and recognizing Veterans Day in particular this year. As we know, it's on November 11th every year. And I'll just read a brief synopsis here. It's recognizing Veterans Day 2014 as a special welcome home commemoration for all who have served in the military since September 14th, 2001. Now, it includes those who have served, and it lays out a number of whereases and wherefores about all the different statistics involved with that, and I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but what really struck me was at the end, it says, whereas November 11th is a day for the nation to reflect on the service and sacrifice of every generation of veterans, now therefore be it resolved that the Senate recognizes Veterans Day 2014 as a special welcome home commemoration for all who have served in the United States Armed Forces, promotes awareness of the services and contributions of all 9/11 veterans, and encourages communities in the United States to plan activities for Veterans Day 2014 to honor and support all who have served during this time and to provide citizens of the United States an opportunity to present unified recognition of the service and sacrifices of post 9/11 veterans. And that really struck me as something that was really a wonderful thing. It passed by acclamation on September 18th, and I thought it would be important to bring it to our council and do our part in making sure that we get the word out. For your consideration.
So we're going to add that to the agenda. Okay.
Are we discussing it now?
There's no discussion.
There's none?
I'm just saying.
Yeah. Go ahead, if you had a comment.
Is it possible that we could research among our 2,000 residents and see who we could honor at a special meeting or a special dinner, a special event to recognize these individuals?
It's a great idea.
Jen's looking, how are we going to do that? I can see. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're looking from 2001, though. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, Veterans Day is for all veterans.
Veterans Day is
and
for
families.
all, but if we can invite them all to the event, maybe read the proclamation from the Senate and, in some way, bestow additional honor on those people who have served since 9/11.
Mr. Henshaw has his hand up.
The only thing I was going to say is if we can just get the word out, Madam Town Clerk. Yeah. What I was going to say is if we could get it out, what you could do is you could do that, and we could have a small reception after the council meeting on Tuesday. That would not be hard to put together. Anything more than that, suggested dinner, probably not. We can do that quick enough, but unless you wanted to move it to a different date. But as far as doing something quickly when you're all going to be here, I would recommend recognizing this through resolution and proclamation at your November meeting.
Our meeting is November 3rd.
Yeah, that's next Monday.
Right. I know we did have out, I think I mentioned it before, the Willing Warriors has an event on November 11th that they'd asked for attendance.
November 11th?
Yes. I think they have their open house.
We can find veterans, but I can't,
I'm married to one.
You're married to one.
I don't necessarily know if I don't reach out to the entire community, would people get upset?
Well, maybe the solution would be, God bless you, would be, can we have a link or something on our website? Can we also perhaps text out on our system something about that, to inform folks who are on the system, the text? Just make an effort anyway to get the word out.
So say maybe even a banner sign.
With relatively short notice, it's going to be.
Well,
I think we're going to have to use our resources, like getting it onto the website. Maybe do a news release. I would do maybe a press release. That would be. I don't know, that's the old fashioned way to do things.
It would be really great if we had signage outside our town hall that could be changed.
We have the message boards on the corners. We can maybe use those.
You possibly use that. Other than that, go newer waves, Facebook, Twitter, all
No,
those.
but I'm just saying that when you're sitting at that light, if we had something out here, out front, people would read it. Meeting tonight. When I was on the ARB, I pushed for that. I thought we had plans for it, but it never came to fruition. So what happened with all of that?
I'll get it in the town center.
Okay.
Town center design.
I know, but that's going to be years down the road. And
Yes, I know.
We could use something now.
Yes, of course, we have Colt. I went to the Boy Scout troop awards ceremony at Camp Snyder on Sunday, and yes, it was really amazing. You had all these young boys and young men. They gave out over a couple hundred awards. They say that statistically, I think it was only 2 out of 100 Boy Scouts actually can get that award, which is pretty amazing. Yeah. So we'll be honoring him with his signed resolution at our next council meeting. And of course, he was the one that did our project for the entrance sign to our, the town. Yeah.
He needed our project, and of course, she needed to acknowledge the project.
Right. Yeah, they did a great job. They actually even had his cake was actually the sign of Haymarket. They designed it, yeah, with a little eagle there as well. So it was really really cool. It's good stuff. Okay, a few other minor comments. Sorry.
No, the only other thing I really need to address is also with regard to our other RFP that was out. Both Marchant and I completed the interviews today. I'm hoping to bring a recommendation for you all at the regular council meeting as well as far as our on-call planning services. I'll have the report. It'll be very similar to what you're used to seeing along with a recommendation.
Okay.
With that being said, reminder, fall retreat is this Wednesday. What's that?
It's a good thing you reminded me.
Wednesday, October 29th, and Thursday, October 30th. It's from 4 p.m. It will be at the museum. We have a conflict with the in-person absentee voting here on Thursday, so I figured we might as well we'll just move it over to the museum.
So it's this Wednesday, Thursday?
It's this Wednesday and Thursday from 4 to 9.
I may be at some of them.
Okay.
I would encourage everybody to try their best to make it. It's very worthwhile. Also, as a matter of note, I will be on vacation the week of November 10th through the 14th.
Okay. All right, I think we have...
What time is it? 4 to 9
4 to 9
Wednesday?
and Thursday. 29th and 30th. I got them.
Picture?
Yes, Nick.
We still need a special session, executive. So, have you already spoke to the attorney about what we need to be called in for? Is it personnel?
It's not personnel.
I did have a conversation with Mr. Krim, who I think had a conversation with you, so I think we're on the same side.
Oh, good. So we know what we're going in for. Okay.
I hope so. If not, please correct me.
Okay. All right.
And I understand that I have to recuse myself.
Okay.
That's my understanding.
Not a problem. So, go ahead. I'm sorry.
Mayor, the motion would be I move that the council convene in closed session to discuss the following. As permitted by Virginia Code, Section 2.2-3711A7, consultation with legal counsel or meeting by staff or consultants about another matter requiring advice of counsel, in particular commercial lease negotiations.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? And abstained? All right, great. Thank you.
Is pertaining to the matters that I convened closed session.
I second.
All in favor?
All right, are we back in live? Great.
Mr. Mayor, the motion would be I move that the council certify that in the closed session just concluded, nothing was discussed except the matter or matters, one, specifically identified in the motion to convene in closed session, and two, lawfully permitted to be discussed under the provisions of the Virginia Freedom of Information Act cited in that motion.
I so moved.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
For the record, we should specify that Councilwoman Swinford did not participate in the session, in the closed session, because of a conflict of interest.
Yep.
And Councilman Aiken was absent.
Correct. Okay. We have left here.
Yeah.
You got your thing. Joe, was there anything else that you had?
I think we're
We're good? Okay, great. I think that's it for this
I
evening.
got one more thing that I
Oh,
want
sorry.
to talk about.
Okay.
I move to adjourn.
I second.
All right, all in favor? Aye.
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 Great. Thank you all.
I saw the looks on your faces when I said that.
Dude, I'm coming across the
I moved to dinner.